A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are yet back with another exciting session on technology as an enabler of internal audit process. I have with me Mr. Kaiser Shakir, who is the chairman of Kuwait chapter. I have three of the very revered speakers of the day: CA Paul Jacker K from Chennai, Mr. Ashish Singhal, who hails from Kolkata, and Mr. Devyang Desai, who comes from Mumbai. I also have a very young enterprising CA Ridham Ahuja to take care and moderate this entire session, coupled with the support from CA Aarti, the secretary to this board and technical support, and CA Sailesh Verma, who is a part of the board to take care of the initiations. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all to this great seminar. We have more than 6,000 people tuned in at the start of the session. The session will also be live on YouTube, and we'll see number of people pouring in. I want to thank you all for an overwhelming response to this programs of the board. I have been incessantly saying that we also try our level best. We passionately find speakers who are best in their field, and your response is also immense. Fantabulous, I should say. Today happens to be Words Brothers Day, and you can deem me as your brother. It's great that we all are professional brethren, and we all, there is a saying that birds of the same feather flock together. Yes, we all flock together. And on this Word Brothers Day, I would like to share a small couplet with you. The couplet says, "Hamari dosti ke daftar mein tabadle kahan huzur. Hamari dosti ke daftar mein tabadle kahan huzur. Yahan jo ek baar aaya, bas yahi reh gaya." So this is the relationship. When you meet people, they become your friends, brothers for life. Not taking much of your time, I give back the session to Madam Ridham Ahuja to take care of the further proceedings. Ridham, the dice is all yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, sir. Very good evening to all the faculties and my fellow members present here and all the viewers who are watching us on YouTube Live. I wholeheartedly pray and hope that you are all safe and secure at your place with your family members during the time of this global pandemic. We all together wish that the good time will come back soon. Until then, we must keep on learning using the virtual space that ICAI has enabled for us to grow and learn more. We have an excellent program today, which is need of the hour, on technology as enabler of internal audit. The secret of change is to focus all your energy not on finding the old, but on building the new. With this background, we pledge here to take something new from our learned speakers. I would like to hand over the dice to CA Kaiser Shakir, the chairman of Kuwait chapter of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, to give the opening remarks. We would like to hear from you, sir.
Recording in progress.
Thank you, CA Ridham Ahuja, for the introduction. CA Charanjit Singh Anandaji, Chairman IASB. CA Anil Bhandari, Vice Chairman, Internal Audit Standard Boards. CA Ridham Ahuja, CA Aarti Bansal, IASB board members, distinguished speakers, CA Dr. K. Paul Jaikar, CA Devyang Desai, and Mr. Ashish Singhal. Distinguished guests, fellow members, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to you all. It is indeed a great honor and privilege to be hosting today's VCM on technology as enabler of internal audit. On behalf of Kuwait chapter of ICAI, I take this opportunity to welcome you all. We have a lineup of distinguished and eminent speakers with us, and hence, I would not like to take much of your time. Two words on Kuwait chapter and some takeaways before I let CA Ridham to initiate with today's proceedings. History of ICAI Kuwait chapter goes back a couple of decades. From what we started as a Chartered Accountant Guild 14 years back is now a 500 plus members active and vibrant chapter. During these 14 years journey, the chapter has achieved many highs. ICAI and the Kuwait Accounting and Auditors Association, called KAAA, have signed a historic Memorandum of Understanding. The main objective of the MOU is to work together to strengthen the accounting, financial and audit knowledge base in Kuwait, among others like knowledge sharing, faculty and student exchange program. Thanks to our immediate past president, CA Atul Gupta ji and his team, at the Examinations Committee Kuwait is now an examination center for all CA examinations We successfully conducted the Foundation, IPCC, and Final C examinations in November 2020 and January 2021. Now, something about the program today, but before that, according to Peter Drucker, every organization needs one core competence, and that's innovation. In 1970s, we used to have innovation, which was synonymous to creativity and new idea generation. The 1980s, it was process of bringing new ideas into production. The 1990s onwards, we had consumer-focused results that's new and desired. And now the 21st century mantra, which has always been connect and develop. The only means for innovation and creating unique value is often via innovative processes and unique combination of product and services that synergistically enhance value. Regardless of how innovations are achieved, one thing remains certain, and that's the mantra, innovate or evaporate. And that is quickly becoming the norm and a strategic focus point. Interestingly, sometime back, I read and caught something that caught my attention was the Audit software, which was developed by one of our fellow members, Mansi Jain of Udaipur, along with CA Palak Vasa and IITN Smith Parsania of Rajkot. A software that can complete a 3 months audit in just 30 seconds. Really amazing. And the team's effort and hard work and skills has got their software to rank in the top 100 startups of South Asia. And kudos to these young entrepreneurs. So this is one of the boons of the technology. Let me quickly touch base on Industrial Revolution 5.0 and end. IR 5.0 calls for people to work alongside robots and smart machines. It's about robots helping humans work better and faster by leveraging advanced technologies like the Internet of Things and big data. It adds a personal human touch to Industry 4.0 pillars of automation and efficiency. And so in my opinion, I think technology must aim at supporting and not superseding humans. It is about kind of finding the optimal balance of efficiency and productivity. The growing ability of sophisticated technology to monitor large and complex systems, of course, won't replace internal auditors though. Instead, I believe it will enable them to become more efficient and effective in helping organizations solve their problems and meet their goals. And last but not the least, we have to admit that proliferation of robotic automation is inevitable. So while digital developments are progressing in exponential pace, there's a high level of uncertainty about what technologies are really going to be successful over the coming 5 to 10 years or even disruptive. However, it is clear that digitization will have its impact and auditors will have to rethink their audit approaches and possibly their profession as a whole. It will be absolutely crucial for auditors to keep up with the digital change, to understand the impact and to have the technological competence to deal with it. Auditors must therefore, I think, define a digital strategy, and they should train and transform their people and drive a culture of innovation. I can perhaps go on, but sure you do not want my opening remarks to be a VCM in itself. So with that, let me thank you all once again for attending this event, and may I now request Sierradam to carry forward the proceedings from here. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, sir, for your opening remarks. Today, we have a great panel of faculties and personalities who are esteemed and very knowledgeable. It is my pleasure to extend a cheerful welcome to the very respectable and very senior C. Shri Charanjot Singh Nanda, sir, who doesn't need any introduction. He is the epitome of public personality in our profession, an individual who has effected change. He is the founder chairman of Internal Audit Standards Board of the ICAI, chairman of Committee of Management Accounting of the Institute, vice chairman of Continuing Professional Education Committee of ICAI, and member of 26 other committees of the Institute. Under his leadership and guidance, we have been conducting these programs on every Saturdays. This is an exception for today as well as the next week program for being organized on Mondays. All of the programs will be organized on Saturdays only. I would request Nanda sir to address the keynote in order to commence the session. Please, sir, we would love to hear from you.
Thank you, Rhythm. I wholeheartedly welcome the chairman of Kuwait chapter of ICAI, Mr. Kazar Shakir, the three of the revered speakers, Mr. Devang Desai, Mr. Paul Jaikar, Mr. Ashish Singhal, the moderator of the day, Madam Rhythm, Aarti Bansal, the technology team, and CA Shailesh Verma. And all people have come here to go home more enlightened. Ladies and gentlemen, it's always a proud privilege to come and deliver the keynote address. So I just go on to the keynote address. Give me a second so that I'm able to put on my PPT. Hold for a second, please. Rhythm, my PPT is visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Yeah, it's visible, sir.
Great. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have three topics lined up today. The first is feature of internal audit and effective communication. The second is IT controls, IT general controls, and the third is information technology and chartered accountants are handshaking. So, ladies and gentlemen, in the first session, I would like to put forth before you the feature of internal audit. Internal audit needs to focus on domains in comparison to skills and capabilities, ways of working, you call them as agile models, and digital assets and solutions, which you term more aptly as technology. The second step is extending the use of traditional analytics to include predictive models. You do a prediction, this will happen. This may be the risk systematic approach. You dwell on that. This may be the fraud policy. You ultimately predict what may happen and try to nip it at the bud at that place. Robotic process automation, very, very important. Artificial intelligence, blockchains, all are the future of internal audit. And with analytics, when you are able to do effective analytics, you have the data at your command and you can draw various reports that may suit you, because internal audit essentially is a management function and you have to report to the board or to the audit committee as maybe. So the more robust is your reporting, the more rightful and effective is your analysis of data, the better is the assimilation of data and use of that in order to put the competitors at bay. The third step is it would lead to realizing benefits such as audit quality enhancement. Enhancement of audit quality is of paramount importance to us. Risk reduction, yes, the risk gets reduced when you have everything at your command, as well as increased risk intelligence. Somebody told me once, he said, Mr. Nanda, I want a business where please tell me a business where there is no risk. I said, please come back and tell me that business. Risk is never a danger. Risk is an opportunity, provided you understand where the risk resides, and more importantly, you are able to take calculative risks. What is effective communication? Internal audit has to communicate valuable results to the stakeholders. We at IASB always have the notion that we don't have to service the clients or stakeholders, but to the regulators and governments also. Whenever we do something, that has to be a masterpiece. Now, what do the stakeholders want? The stakeholder wants updated results, future-oriented, not only covering the past. Unfortunately, audit has always been associated with post-mortem, with past, but now it has been come to concurrence and to predictive environments. Great focus on risk. Yes, risk is a very, very important facet which needs to be adequately monitored. Risk, if it comes today, how it is mitigated. Risk, if it comes tomorrow, how we have ways and means to tackle that. The control weaknesses have to be zero, and the system has to be so robust and strong that you are able to effectively counter any risk that may come on its way. Easily accessible and tailor-made information. Information has to be easily accessible, easily interpretable. The inference drawn has to be very much so that manifold results can be acquired. Flexibility is needed in the way auditors approach small versus large organizations. Flexibility in approach, flexibility in reporting, flexibility in analysis, putting total bias on the priorities. The second is IT general controls. Now, what are IT general controls? IT general control is base. It is the basis for data reliability. Whatever data you are digging out, whatever data you are acquiring, whatever data on which you are trying to create certain issues, the data on which you are working, the data on which you are doing analysis, report generation, again a step ahead. You have the data, you create reports out of that. You have automated controls. Everything can't be taken into account. That data is so used, so you need to automate the control and other system functionality underlying business processes. The entire business process has to be very coherently, decisively looked upon. I'm reminded of a couplet of a idiom which says that a chain can never be stronger than its weakest point. So the entire underlying business process has to be robust. What are the key stakeholders of IT general controls? The owners, very, very important, people who have invested their money, the investors who come and invest their time and energy and their emotions in somebody else's venture, regulators whose basic job is to ensure that things are in sync with compliances and nothing illegal is being done. Audit committees who are solely responsible for reporting to the board, management and auditors continues to increase. Internal auditor is responsible for what? Review of effectiveness of controls, effectiveness of the entire control mechanism that is there, efficiency and appropriateness of information management process and controls, and needs to focus essentially on three important facets. The first is reliability of information management processes. I will stop here and tell you one thing. You know how people make centuries? It takes at least 70, 80 good strokes to make a century. Even if you want to be too much realistic, modest, at least 60 good strokes makes a century. But for a bad stroke, you're out. One bad stroke, one bad play, you're out of the match. Similarly is when it comes to IT general controls. The reliability of information management processes is very, very important. There is no second way. Adherence to group policies and requirements, because you are there to percolate the thought processes, the policies, requirements, vision to the lower level, and protection of information assets, the IPR, very, very important. The third topic, ladies and gentlemen, today is information technology and chartered accountants are handshaking. IT and CS now have come very close. And what Mr. Shakir said was very essential. He said technology is there to assist the human being, to assist the process, so that the results which come are error-free and have the large management information quotient into it. Information technology and chartered accounting. Businesses are overhauling traditional models and processes to enhance customer experience, data-driven decision makings to boost their operational performance. It is ultimately the IT which helps us to be so robust, so spearheaded that we are able to scale right into the right greener pasture. In technology-enabled world, CS have to be agile, innovative, redefine its talent and inspire board engagement. CS have to acquire the skill sets. Our technical skills have to be honed to the highest level so that we are able to deliver the best. The CS have to embrace technologies like artificial intelligence, robotic process, automation, blockchains, and other technologies, so they are able to effectively use them for discharge of their duties in effective conduct of the internal audit. The audit function that fails to moderate and innovate and being unable to attract digital era talent, they need to thrive and go back. They need to understand that their working is not up to the mark, and therefore technology and chartered accountants have to go hand in glove so that they're able to give effective results to the board or audit committee as may be. So I want to thank here on this, but I want to tell you that your board is very clear on certain issues. Number one, your board is very keen that all chartered accountants in the country need to wake up to the fact that ultimately all of the people across will have to mature, will have to graduate, will have to grow up to embrace new technologies and new professional avenues. Statutory audit is taking a backseat, and internal audit is a sunrise industry of the times. And it is ultimately your mindset that makes the difference. I'll give a small example. You all have heard about Shahid Bhagat Singh. When Bhagat Singh was to be hanged, it was late 5:36 o'clock in the evening, 23rd March. The executor came and said, Mr. Bhagat Singh, you have to be hanged. Bhagat Singh got up and ran after the executor. The executor also ran. He thought he may be trying to hit me. But what happened? Bhagat Singh hugged that fellow. He said, thank you. It was my dream that I should be sacrificing myself on the country, and the day has come. Saying so, he took up a piece of coal and wrote on the wall. एक दीवार पे एक इबारत लिखी. क्या लिखा उसने? उस 22 साल के नौजवान ने लिखा, कुछ इस कदर मेरी फितरत से वाकिफ है मेरी कलम. कुछ इस कदर मेरी फितरत से वाकिफ है मेरी कलम. इश्क लिखना भी चाहो तो इनकलाब लिखा जाता है. इश्क लिखना भी चाहो तो इनकलाब लिखा जाता है. When it comes in your veins, what you do, if it is excellence, when you work, that what you intend to perform is par excellence. That is your dream, that is your vision, that is your mission. Nobody on this earth can stop from making you a great man, a great professional. And it becomes the imperative duty of all of us to resonate to the entire world that our institute, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, has to remain at unprecedented heights. For that, we all have to work unceasingly day and night. We have three of the great speakers. Very keen to listen to them. So over to Madam Rhythm Ahuja for taking the reins of this session ahead. Madam.
Thank you so much, sir, for the keynote address. Next, we have on our panel C. Divyang Desai, partner at a Big Four consulting firm, who have extensive experience in internal audit and capital project advisory, and leads it for clients in pharmaceuticals, real estate, and infrastructure sectors. He also manages the internal audit and process review for companies in media and entertainment. He has considerable experience in contract risk services engagements for companies in media, shipping, chemical and fertilizers, financial institutions, and private equity, having large portfolio investments. He also leads the risk management and design of internal finance control for leading infrastructure company and listed MNC life science company. I would request Mr. Desai to give us knowledge insight on the topic, Future of Internal Audit and Effective Communication. Over to you, sir.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you, Rhythm, for introduction. Thank you, Mr. Nanda. Thank you, Mr. Kaiser. We had a very powerful opening session, and I'm very glad that I'm part of the speaking arrangement today, and I will share my views on the future of internal audit and effective communication. Why I choose this topic was to share my experience of how internal audit has moved over years from the traditional approach, and as on date, what are the tools, technology being used, and what is the future of internal audit going forward, and why effective communication. When we discuss about communication, it's oral and written communication. And while discussing on the communication, I will stress more on both the aspects. When you say verbal, it's an oral communication, and why it has to be more impactful, effective, as well as at the same time why written is also impactful as a part of internal audit. So before I start my session, I agree with Nanda sir. On the future of internal audit, the most important is the skill that is required. And when I'm not saying a skill of an individual, but a group of individual team members who will perform the audit on the ground and bring value to the industry, to the companies that we are working for. And it's no longer skill required is only of a chartered accountant, but a team of a techno-commercial, which consists of chartered accountants, MBAs, engineers, specialists, who make a core team who will provide value to the clients. So most important is the skill that will drive the internal audit going forward. Second is the tools that will be used while performing internal audit. And these are no longer traditional way of vouching a specific transaction. Company by company, board always asks for what is a sample auditor has taken. The observation is drawn based on a limited sample, or there is a larger and comprehensive coverage of a volume. To give a simple example of a payroll and inventory management, auditor always comes out saying that X number of payment has been made on excess of X employee. But the moment board asks, our employee strength is 25,000, what is the sample auditor is talking about? and is a sample representative of a population. In a traditional internal audit, there is always a limitation by auditor to take a sample and do manual verification. There comes where the tool plays an important role, where analytics, which Mr. Nanda also mentioned on the importance of analytics, and analytics enables to take a larger volume as compared to a limited sample. The entire population of purchase, the entire population of inventory, the entire population of revenue, production. One is to understand the nuances of the data structure and the tool that will be used to do data analytics. And then based on the analytics, you identify the anomalies, the insights, and then do the audit, which I will discuss more when I come on the section specifically on the analytics. But the future is have a very powerful techno-commercial skill. At the same time, have tools, technology, which will be utilized, implemented during the course of audit. And the last will be how effective communication is at 3 levels. Before the start of the work, during the engagement, periodic communication, and at the end, how do you communicate back to your client, to the board of directors and the management, which I will focus more on the part 2, that is effective communication. I have a small presentation where I will discuss first on the future of IA, and then part 2 will be effective communication. Yeah. Rhythm, is this visible?
Yes, sir.
Very much. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Before I thought that before going into the future of internal audit and the tools, wanted to showcase a simple internal audit methodology and approach, which talks about first you define what is expectation of a company and the internal auditor, where you co-develop what is expected, what will be covered during the audit, why it will be covered, whether the plan will be for the year 1, year 2, or it's a 3-year plan. So first it starts with co-developing expectation. Then comes the second and developing the internal audit plan, which will lay down year-by-year plan and the area to be audited. Then comes to specific areas of how the audit will be conducted, where the project plan will be made. Then execution, and finally is deliver results. This is a simple and a normal approach which has been followed over the years, which starts with planning, then executing, closure, and reporting. We'll not speak more on this because this is a methodology which irrespective of a small company or a large conglomerate, this is a typical internal audit focus or a process will be followed. But in addition to the normal process, important is first define an expectation, a very clear expectation of what is expectation of the management and of the board from the internal audit. Based on that, do a risk analysis which will clearly communicate to auditor and the management which are the high risk areas over the next 2 to 3 years, and how the internal audit plan will be made that will address this risk. Based on that, the plan will be made. So the important is first focus on laying down the expectation, agree on the expectation, do a risk analysis, based on the risk analysis, identify the risk universe, key risk. From the key risk, identify which are the critical areas that will be covered under internal audit. Then comes the phase 4 that says actual conducting internal audit on year, which can be broken down into a yearly plan, half-yearly plan, or a quarterly plan. And then comes an individual area audit, where an auditor does a detailed analysis of the process, transactions, system, documentation, and then arrive at an audit findings, queries that will result into an internal audit report and finally presentation to the management. Next is what are the key expectations of an internal audit? It's no longer giving a finding and observation report. The expectations are beyond just providing an audit observation. First and foremost is what is an expected accountabilities the internal audit will have from the overall internal audit engagement. what communication and escalation protocol an internal auditor will follow during the course of engagement. When a team is conducting an audit, what will be the level of communication, what will be the format of communication, what will be the frequency of communication. Most important, what escalation protocols will be done by an auditor and also by auditee to whom the audit has been conducted. Who are the core teams and specialists? Because going forward, any client will always focus on a company and say, this is a specialist engagement. Who are the core team members who will conduct the internal audit? For example, cybersecurity audit, review of regulatory compliances, CapEx and project management. This requires a core team of specialists, including chartered accountants, who will form a team to deliver the expectation which has been agreed at the start of the engagement. The second most important is what is a methodology and an approach. A methodology will first define what are the tools, techniques will be utilized, how the process will be conducted, whether the internal audit will focus more on a transaction level verification or it will be a top-down approach. So it's important that methodology and approach are discussed, laid down before the start of the work so that it's clear communication of how the method will be followed by the team. The next will be leading practices. As an internal auditor, the focus is always that what is the value an internal auditor brings to the client in terms of what he or she has identified or understood the practices at various companies within the same sector or companies at various other sectors. Because any company will have a common process and common practices, and certain companies will have a unique function which is unique to those companies. So when we do a sector company benchmarking and a cross-company or cross-sectors practices benchmarking, that will tell an auditor of comparing the practices and the system and process followed by a company vis-a-vis the compete. The last will be tools, technology, and location. If the operation is pan-India, company and the board would like to understand how the different locations will be covered as a part of audit and what is the strength of internal audit team to ensure that every location has been covered either in 3 years or a horizon of yearly how to be covered. Just to give an example, in one of the audit, one of the board members, if we have a pan-India operations, how every location or a critical location will be covered and how the same has been involved in the overall planning. So this also talks about when you define a plan, it's no longer only defining a process or specific functions to be audited, but also has to include the geography location which will be covered during the audit. It may have a country-specific location or it may have a multi-country location, but everything has to be included in the overall plan, so that when you define overall plan, it has the geography, it has a country, it has specific function, and the specific processes before the start of the work, so that expectation is laid down before one actually conducts internal audit. So these are 7-8 key themes and expectation which will drive an internal audit agenda going forward. As an internal audit, till now focus was always on the assurance. Assurance means a review of the existing controls, review of existing policies, existing processes, review of compliance to standard operating procedure, and reporting to the board whether there are issues of non-compliances or the controls are ineffective. In order to give a right, meaningful value to the client, there is an expectation to provide an advice and also anticipation. So it's no longer providing only assurance-based internal audit. The need of the hour is advise and anticipate. Advising on if there are issues with respect to non-compliance of the internal policies and procedure, what is the root cause of such non-compliances? understanding the real problem, and then defining and advising such that the same problem doesn't occur in the future. Board always wanted to understand not only the finding, but what is the advice an auditor is providing to the board such that the same issues or same problem will not occur in the future. If there are issues with respect to non-compliance to the internal policies, one based on a certain transaction, an internal auditor highlights the non-compliances, but unless an auditor provides a meaningful advice on how to address the root cause, the problem will stay only at the finding and or a query resolution stage. It's not providing an insight to the management on how to mitigate the risk. So the role from assurance moves next to the insight. The insight is more on providing the role of a true advisor to the management, providing various solutions of how the same will be mitigated, and advising on the right relevant solution to the client. Because a specific practice or a solution which is implemented as a company A may not be feasible for a company B and C. So one has to really understand what were the problem, based on an experience, identify what solution would be implemented that will mitigate the risk. So that the role is moved from a problem of assurance to an advising. And also moving forward, anticipating the risks that will innovate in the future. So it has moved from assurance to advising to anticipating. Anticipating is an auditor based on his experience, based on understanding company objective, based on understanding company's functions, processes, system. The most important is the business of the company. What an auditor will envisage in terms of what are the risks that will impact the company going forward. It can be an area of digitization, technology, cybersecurity, any regulatory changes that an auditor is aware that may impact the company, which company has not envisaged as on today. So is raising the alarm saying that this is where the area where company may be impacted if the appropriate measures are not taken as on date. The risk will pertain to third-party risk, supply chain, governance and reporting. The most important nowadays, many companies follow or are focusing on ESG and EHS, environment, social, general, and environment, health and safety. What are the various practices that companies across the globe are following? What are the companies in India are following? As compared to this, where is the current company where an auditor is conducting an audit? Then you provide an auditor having understood this and really then provide advice and also anticipate and helps the client to understand what could the risk that has to be understood as of today and what the mitigation measures should be developed by the company going forward. So role of internal auditors move from assurance and going forward is more on advising and anticipating. It requires a real transformation of the entire approach towards an internal audit. So focus will be on the insight and anticipate. Before I move to the next session, but want to touch base on what will be the approach going forward as compared to a traditional approach. So it's a tech-enabled internal audit, which requires first risk sensing on IA planning that talks about anticipating the risk based on which the internal audit plan will be done. Automation, because internal audit also requires a lot of transaction level review, testing of controls, review of various documents, review of various contracts. So the work paper is very critical from the standpoint of the work being done by the auditor. The work paper are important form of a communication by an auditor to demonstrate that the work has been done as per the agreed scope. Every aspect of a risk and as per the scope has been covered. All the controls which has been agreed by the client has been tested, and the results of the testing are documented. As the volume of business increases and also the volume of the audit and the process increase, manual work paper will always a challenge. So that requires an automated work papers. You required a very strong database management system, which from the day audit is commenced till the closure, every important aspect of internal audit are documented into an automated internal audit system. The advantages are the system, the automated work paper remain for X number of years. Those can be archived after X period based on either need of the internal audit, or there is any inquiry either by the management or by board or any external party. And it also provides the overall understanding of how the work was done by the internal audit team. So when a same work has been done after 2 years, the same can be leveraged by the existing internal audit team. The second phase of internal audit is testing and validation. There are two levels of fieldwork. One is a detailed substantial testing. Second is a manual controls, and the third are automated controls. Substantial fieldwork that requires a detailed analysis and a larger volume of data to be covered for the audit, where advanced analytics plays a very important role, which will enable an auditor to cover a larger volume of business, larger volume of transactions. So during a testing and validation phase, one is to really understand what are the manual controls, what are automated controls. Based on that, understand and identify what tools will be used. Analytics, artificial intelligence, robotics. When it comes to ERP based or automated quality assurance control, GRC tools, the tools which are available that run across various controls. And the last will be the reporting. Board no longer requires a very detailed report. The objective is always to provide a limited report with the maximum impact. So now the reporting has now changed from a detailed report to a very critical dashboard or communication through a very limited document that clearly spells out what are the key issues that auditor has identified, what are the recommendation or advices that have been provided by auditor, what is the action plan by management, and when it will be implemented. So the detailed report is for the management, for them to implement what auditor has suggested. To the board is always a dashboard, either a single slide or not more than 3 to 4 slides that only speaks about what auditor has covered in last quarter or last 2 quarters, what are the coverage, what are the key recommendations that auditor wants to communicate to the board in terms of the finding that auditor has identified in the last quarter. And the last and most important reporting is on the implementation of the action plan. Whatever is agreed by the management, how it has been implemented, and what is the root cause is the same as not been implemented. So the reporting has been now going forward restricted to a very, very limited but a very powerful reporting, focusing more on the value, focusing more on what are the true insight an auditor is providing to the management and board. At the same time, how auditor is flying off the critical issue in terms of implementation and why the specific implement has not been conducted. So if we compare the traditional approach versus the tech-enabled, first the focus is more on the risk, anticipation of the risk. Based on that, identify the plan, complete automation of the work being carried out by the internal auditor. During the actual audit and validation phase, use of different tools, technologies, and getting a specialist who will provide a more value to the team in conducting the audit. And in terms of communication, what will be reported to the board in terms of what are the true insight an auditor has provided to the management in last quarter or last 2 quarters, depending on the frequency of the reporting. These are I want to touch base upon certain digital assets which should be used during the internal audit. Analytics, robotics, artificial intelligence, automated controls. The list is numerous, but the objective is one is to move from the traditional verification of transaction and vouchers to a larger volume through analytics, getting a specialized to understand the real digitization and cybersecurity, and as a core team provide more value to the client. I thought rather than talking about every digital asset, wanted to share some views on the analytics, on how the analytics can play a very important role. What is a journey that a company can have or internal audit can have overall implementation analytics in the internal audit plan? How do one understand where analytics is applicable? Then showing some of the data on what are the various tools that company are using in analytics. This looks very busy slide, but a simple, if you draw down a normal internal audit approach, which starts from planning, risk identification, developing internal audit plan, deployment of resources, that is team member, execution internal audit plan, and deliver and communication. Where internal audit will be conducted and where analytics and other automation will play a critical role, you can see a specific color coding of black and orange is where our auditor has to understand where digital assets, where an analytics can be deployed. At the planning stage, at the deployment of resources, because deployment of resource nothing but who will be the team member, what are the skill sets, which point of time of an engagement during the year, that specific skill set and individual will be part of the team. So that will cover here. And lastly, during the execution, the entire data analytics will be conducted. So if you see overall, the orange and black are the analytics related tools and digital tools, which has to be planned much at the time of developing the internal audit plan and not at the end when the execution is being done. The advantage of this is very clearly a communication is there that what is the volume of data will be covered through analytics, who will be the team member that will conduct the audit, and how the execution of internal audit will be done. These are some of the data which talks about if a company wants to implement data analytics. This shows a maturity curve of various companies based on various researchers. This talks about how a company from a stage of initial data analytics to a leading data analytics company for the internal audit, and what are the tools being used by various companies. So the initial stage is more of an Excel and an ACL tool. If the data volume is not that large, many auditor uses Excel. If it is data is more cumbersome, ACL is another tool being used. The most critical is stage 3 and 4, where various tools are being used for analytics. And nowadays, predictive analytics tools are being used, where a process chain continuous monitoring is being done through predictive analytics tool. So this journey for any company want to understand, or an auditor wants to implement the analytics, one has to understand at what stage we are, what are the tools can also be implemented by auditor, because as against a specific tool, the most important is what is the IT system being used by the company, what is the data structure, whether tool will be implemented given the challenges of a data. For example, if the company is not using an SAP or Oracle or an ERP, to have a very large sophisticated analytics tool will not work, because the quality of data that is required for analytics will not provide the true insight that an auditor would require when an auditor performs an analytics. The objective of analytics is not only find the anomalies or problem. The important is what are the outliers, what are the real anomalies, where the problem is, and then based on that identify a real sample and then deep dive into specific transactions. This wanted to share an example of a company where before you start the work, one can analyze how do we understand whether an analytics can be performed in addition to understanding the tools available and the system and the type of IT system being implemented by the company. One has to really draw a simple functional analysis process which talks about various departments, then talks about various sub-functions of those departments, then identifying which processes is based on a system that everything is through automation and which are through manual controls. Then the next steps will be then identify where analytics can be performed and where analytics cannot be performed. So that when an auditor does an audit, auditor is aware that these are the X number of sub-functions will be done by analytics. These are the X number of sub-functions will be done based on a manual verification of transactions. To give a simple audit of a production and procurement, if there are certain activities which are done manually, irrespective of any system a company would have. For example, storage and stacking, certain compliances. One has to manually go and review those compliances. But when it comes to a production planning, when it comes to a receipt of inventory, when it comes to quality check of inventory, when it comes to payment processing, there are systems. One has to really understand how the processes are being implemented in the system of the various processes and activities, how many are through system and how many are outside the system. Based on that, then draw where analytics can be performed and where analytics cannot be performed. So first step is understanding the IT system of the company, then understanding the overall business of the company. It's no longer only focusing on one or two functions. Complete understanding of the various processes, function, draw down into sub-functions and activity, then mapping into which process, which system, which subsystem, what are the various activities are done manually and which runs through the system. Then provide insight into this will be covered under analytics and this will be covered under manual verification. Because the amount of data and a sample will be taken for a manual will be limited as compared to analytics. So this criteria of laying down what will be covered is most important at the planning stage. Wanted to highlight what will be a shift when wants to really conduct an internal audit based on analytics. So it's a typical commencement audit which we already discussed in the earlier part of the presentation. The important is predictive modeling steps, which requires what is the total volume of data, predictive modeling in terms of what will be the risk that has to be covered to data analytics, what testing and validation will be done, and what is the expectation of the output. So analytics is not only focusing on the anomalies or exception. It's beyond that, because the analytics will give you a dashboard of the entire function into various reporting of APIs. Then based on an auditor requirement, it may also communicate in terms of based on various analysis being done, what are the outliers? What are the exceptions? Which transactions doesn't fall under the normal category of transaction, which requires a deep dive into further analysis. So how a shift from a traditional approach to internal audit analytics is first understanding the IT system, understanding the overall business of the company, understanding the system and the data structure, then defining the analytics scripts, then understanding of what expectation is from the analytics, then output, that is an exception output, and then comes the audit. So it's a shift from directly conducting an transaction audit vis-a-vis first understanding what are the risks that we want to cover, what are the various exceptions or output that an auditor requires from analytics, and then conduct an audit based on the anomalies identified by analytics team. In addition to analytics, there is always a concept of a continuous control monitoring, which is nothing but in a traditional, it was more of a concurrent audit. This is more on any specific areas which has a larger volume, where the functions works on year on, there is no change, that will be covered under continuous control monitoring. So you define an overall process, you define an overall entire control metrics, you define a self-assessment checklist, and then do a continuous monitoring. So this will enable an auditor to shift from covering every area, every quarter, and every year, and focus on emerging trends and emerging risks, as compared to doing the same production, same purchase, inventory audit year on year and quarter on quarter. One has to segregate which process and function can be done on continuous control monitoring, so that auditor can shift from conducting the same audit year on audit and focus on important emerging risk and focus on a limited area that will really impact the company in achieving a business objective. The first step is to understand which are the common process where a system of continuous monitoring, control monitoring can be implemented, how control monitoring can be made more robust within the company internal audit and the control environment, and how auditor can play an important role in implementing checks and control in the entire continuous control monitoring, and move from traditional internal audit focusing on every process to a much larger and emerging risk. So before I move to the part 2, that is effective communication, the objective of highlighting the feature of IA was how the auditors move from a traditional internal audit of doing a transaction level audit to more, and the role as how has changed from to an advisor and anticipation of a risk, using a various digital assets and a large and a deeper insight into the various analytics tool that can be used by auditor by conducting an audit. And move from doing the same process and function audit year on audit to move to a larger and important areas, for example, cybersecurity, technology audit, supply chain review, project management, various other processes and function and areas where auditor can play an important role. At the same time, focus on the normal processes once in a year or once in a 2 year, because already there is a concept of continuous monitoring. So the risk and controls and review of same from the implementation of effectiveness of control is already being implemented. I will now take to the session 2, that is effective communication. Everybody will agree that an auditor does a lot of verification of our data, documenting of issues, documenting of observation, finding. But if there is, if the communication is somewhat not clear, Then the most important aspect during the closing meeting is either there is a disagreement of what auditor has been identified as a finding, or there may be a scenario of saying that this particular aspect has not been looked by auditor at all, or the finding is not correct because there are various other documentation which auditor should have looked into during the course of audit, which has not been looked into. So the important is what is our overall impact of either a poor communication or effective communication, because it will leave the impression to a management, to the board as an auditor, if the communication is not clear. So the communication is no longer either at the start of the audit or at the end of audit, but the communication is important during the entire course of internal audit, where there is a clear communication of what audit has been conducted, how the issues are being identified, what are the basis of identifying the findings, a constant dialogue and communication with the auditee, and no longer providing surprise at the end of the audit. After having conducted the audit, documenting and communicating every nuances of internal audit, every aspect of the finding with a clear communication of a root cause on saying why it has happened. Second will be the impact and the implication of such finding. Why we are saying this as an audit observation, and it is not a mere fact, but an insight into a management, to management saying that because of this finding, how it will impact the organization in terms of his brand reputation, in terms of financial loss, in terms of non-compliance to regulatory, in terms of financial reporting. So one is to clearly bring out a clear communication of the impact of what we are saying and why we are saying. With that, communicating the right recommendation, saying that why we are saying this will help to mitigate the risk that has been identified on. Because unless the recommendation is not clearly spelled out, auditee will not understand how the same will be implemented. Management will not able to understand what is the value and insight an auditor is providing to the organization, and the board will not understand what are the findings by auditor and whether a recommendation and suggestion provided by auditor will really address the risk. So one has to move from the fact-based reporting of the observation to a real, providing the real insight into what are the root cause of the problem and how it is impacting the company, and to mitigate the risk, what is the suggestion an auditor is providing, and how best it can be done, providing a very effective internal audit report which clearly talks about root cause, impact, materiality, recommendation, but most important, rather than writing a very detailed report, it has to be very sharp, precise, to the point, saying that this is the problem, this is the real root cause of the problem, how it is impacting the company, and clear action plan, which will help them to mitigate the risk. There are some of the report writing characteristics which has to be grammatically correct, accurate, complete, formal, and simple. It has to be very simple to understand, a very clear and precise communication of what an auditor is communicating. Most important, accurate and complete. An audit report cannot have a smallest of error in the internal audit report. And most important is grammatically it has to be correct. So it's no longer just doing an audit and providing a finding report to the management. The final deliverable should talk about how the audit was conducted, what was the approach, what was the sample being conducted, whether analytics was used, what is the percentage of deviation as compared to the population, which has to be accurate and complete, communication of the observation, which is not a fact, but a real insight to the management, a very formal language to be used while documenting an internal report, and it has to be correct from all perspectives. So it has to be easy to read, and it has to convey a message. So it has to have a very powerful story of why we are saying what we are saying, with a complete background and with powerful data which has been included in the report. And why it is important to have a very effective communication? Because communication is the only medium by which an auditor will be able to communicate what is the value an auditor is providing to the company. One is by a written report, which provides a detailed data of what was the scope of work, how the work was conducted, to whom the auditor has discussed the internal audit report, how it will benefit the company, what the auditor have used on implementation of the action plan. So it is a deliverable to the client that can refer to while implementing the suggestion that auditor has provided. In addition to written communication, the most important is verbal communication. These are orals and presentation when an auditor makes a presentation to the senior management, to the board. In addition to a written report, auditor also bring a lot of insight on providing communication on how was his journey as an auditor, how and when he has made a presentation to the senior management, how senior management has agreed on the action plan, and what are the steps senior management will undertake going forward in the entire implementation journey. So, most important, I would like to conclude of effective communication, what we find, why it is important to communicate, and what we recommend is most critical, because auditor is no longer perceived as only identifying the problems and providing a finding report. Vis-a-vis, the focus is more on an advisor providing a real advice and insight to the company, which will really help them company to achieve its business objective. With that, I would end my session and happy to have feedback, questions from the participants. I hope my session was on time, Rhythm.
Yes, sir, definitely. And we will be having the question and answers at the end of the session.
Yeah.
So we'll continue with the another speaker. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your
very nice presentation, Desai sir. Great.
Thank you, sir.
Good.
Yes.
Yes, Rhythm, carry on.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker of this wonderful evening is CA Paul Jaiker K. He is the member of ICAI since 1981. Post-qualification, he did diploma in Insurance and Risk Management from ICAI and certified in Risk and Information System Control, ISACA. Additionally, he is a PhD scholar from University of Madras. He is a practicing chartered accountant with domain expertise in system analysis and design, RBIA, BPR, ERP remediation in industries such as financial institutions, banking and NBFC, manufacturing, airports, seaports, service industry, infrastructure, power plants, conventional and non-conventional, and others. He is also an independent director at Panasonic Carbon India Company Limited. He extends his consultancy in areas of digital forensic audit and analytics, business process re-engineering, risk-based internal audits, and many more for domestic as well as overseas assignments in USA, Malaysia, and Sri Lanka. On the top of it, he has 40 plus years of teaching experience in subjects related to finance, management, IT, computer science, computer applications, programming languages, and software engineering. I would request Mr. Jaikar to share his experience and knowledge on the topic IT General Controls. The dice is over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Madam Rhythm, and I'll start my presentation. The topic we are covering today is it's a very old topic actually. Only thing, it keeps getting updated as the years go by. And earlier it was data centers which were located on premises, that is in the company's own, they own the data centers. Then they moved it out to shared, what we call co-location. They shifted to data centers owned by others. Their company's machines, but data centers owned by others like VSNL or IBM or CPE. And then we reached a point when we neither know where the data center is, nor do we own it. It's got a fancy name. We call it cloud computing. So what you find is over the years, the responsibility of the auditor has increased. Name remains the same. It's called Information Technology General Controls. Anyway, information technology changed its name to Information Systems, and today we don't use any name for it. It's just called a computerized environment. So what I'll do is I'll quickly run through the various things we need to look at, and then I will also show you how we relate this to COBIT, which is a standard from ICAI, and the GTAG and GATE, which is from the Institute of Internal Auditors, and the IASB's audit standards. I've taken only one standard. We'll just to give us an overview and enough detail to get us started or get the interest started. Now, if you look at IT general controls, okay, just put a small picture here. There are so many names we are looking at, like physical security, access controls, etc. It goes on, but I'll take these in detail as we go ahead. And you also find there are a number of bodies which get involved, like the CA Institute. You've got a lot of these people, ICAI. There are so many. Now we have to bring in the IS square also because of the cyber security. We have a lot of people. Then the AICPA. Then we have the England and Wales auditors. Then so many standards. We have Australia, New Zealand, and so on. Now I'll try to keep this on the easy level. Now, first we need to know what are these controls all about. Now, we know there are controls, we know a lot of these, but these are applied to computer systems. Though we have put applications, the applications are strictly only operating systems and network applications and security applications like firewalls, etc. But they do not cover ERP and so on. That comes under application audit. So an IDGC audit doesn't typically get into applications of the user applications. It's concentrated mostly on the infrastructure and the facilities in the infrastructure. So we have operating systems, databases, and this word supporting IT infrastructure is a huge thing. Today we have buildings also have to follow standards. So there's an American standard. India has just taken the same standard with slight modifications. So auditors have to go through all these. It's a lot of work because generally the statutory auditor asks because it's too much work, they ask the internal auditor or a separate auditor to do this. So maybe it will fall into the internal auditor's basket of services. Now, why do we want an IDGC? This is to make sure the data can be relied upon. Now, this is the external auditor's problem. He has got his IFC, IFCOR. He's got a whole lot of responsibilities, and he's not sure about the dependability of the data, which we call as integrity of the data. And then he's also not even sure what processes are in place because a number of these services run on third-party platforms, like an NBFC could be using the NEFT or the RTGS platform of another bank. So NEFT, the NBFC itself has no license to do this money transfer, electronic money transfer, so they depend on a third party. Third party, we are not sure. So if the bank's NEFT or RTGS is in trouble, obviously the NBFC is also in trouble. So I'm just taking a few random examples. Now they are also an integral part of central, there are a lot of regulatory things from the central government central bodies like we have SEBI, MCA, we have IRDA, there are a whole lot of these RBI and so on. And then we have a state, actually, fortunately in India, the state regulation is very low. Central is high and regulatory is very, very high. We can ignore these examples. I will take a much more relevant examples. Now, the common ITGCs, just to kind of quickly look at it. One is we want to know whether the applications are being accessed by the right people. So that's the first worry we have. Now, for instance, let's say right now we are using a particular platform for this class. What happens if one of the enemies of the IASB hacks the session and puts his own propaganda material instead of our PowerPoints? Now there we have to strictly keep access controls. Of course, the Zoom gives a lot of security on that. But we need to also make sure our systems are secure. So these logical controls are not just over applications. I'll take extreme examples. Now we always read about Amazon shops, stores where you can bill without counters. You have drone taxis, you have drone deliveries, and etc. I mean, it's nice to read, but just think if you took a taxi from an airport, a drone taxi, and once it's taken off, the control got hijacked from the taxi company. A thief hijacks it, and then he says, "Pay me a ransom, otherwise I'll crash this drone." Now we got problems. So that's why these access controls have become very complex, right from door locks to biometric. It's gone way beyond just passwords and rights to process data. It's gone way beyond that. Then program change management. Now software changes are very common because obviously, as we said, regulators and users keep on coming up with new demands. Now when you change them, are we sure that only the changes you authorized took place or unwanted changes were also introduced? Now this is a problem the auditor has. So how does he know this? So he has to take the change management system and check. But in some of the audits, the question asked is, okay, you took the change management system and checked what are the changes which were made. But what about changes which were made which had no entries in the change management system? Now the auditor is in a big soup because he's got to check the software and find changes which are not reflected in the change management. So generally the question comes out, should I be a programmer? No, it's not necessary. We have to use sufficient software tools for this, which will throw up all the changes. We can do version control, software is there. You can do file comparisons. You can do a lot of other things. You don't have to be a programmer because you don't need to know the change. All you need to know is whether a change took place or not, authorized or not. Then backup and recovery is very huge now. So it's no longer the backups we take on tapes and disks and keep them somewhere. Regulators have also mandated disaster systems and business continuity. But from the business point of view, now we need to look at some, even I'm not talking about Amazon or a bank. Think of a small business which is using a cloud-based, very low-cost ERP or an accounting package like QuickBooks. Then somewhere there's a fight or a dispute. You don't like the dealer, you want to migrate from QuickBooks. What is the chance of your data being safe in terms of so many regulations like 3 years, 8 years, 16 years? Who keeps the backup? Can you restore it if your subscription to QuickBooks is stopped? Now, almost everybody is on the subscription model. I mean, it's scary, but then one of the responsibilities of the auditor is to report to the audit committee whether they can survive if they change their vendors. So that's one of the major disasters are also very important. I mean, like fire and earthquake. But I think the bigger disaster we are now facing is when people change vendors. Well, whatever data you accumulated, will it be readable? It is something like, your computers, you just change them and then you suddenly find it doesn't have a CD drive. So you can't read your old CDs. So it's something like that, but on a much bigger scale. Then computer operation controls is also very important because you outsource the operations. Today, hardly any user does much. He goes clicking on a menu, or if it's SAP, he types some transaction codes, he's happy. But then what about the real controls like print controls? Can people take fraudulent printouts? Can they take illegal backup copies? Can they add users on their own? Can they shift between one site to the other site? Earlier, there was a console operator, there was a log. Even now, we have logs, but they are huge. So the logs have to be carefully analyzed. Now, physical security has become the easiest because slowly, as people are going to the cloud, we get those third-party certificates. But then remember, as an auditor, you may get an audit of auditing a cloud service provider. So in which case, data center physical security becomes, that's the main crux of the entire audit. Then system development lifecycle is basically how do you go about collecting data for what is the software you want, what are the features you want, how do you explain this to people, how do your users learn, how does the software company learn, how do the vendors learn. So it's become a see, instead of in-house development, today people just buy products, they plug into stuff they don't understand, like you got card companies, you got mutual funds, you got insurance companies. An average company will have their systems talking to vendors, suppliers, buyers, shippers, logistic companies, banks, insurance companies. How was the system study done? How secure is it? Who evaluated the interfaces? And how are we controlling whatever is happening? Now, it's a simple thing like you have a phone, somebody says put an app, check for your vaccination. You're not sure how reliable that app is, how it interfaces, what does it do, and it steals data from your phone because your phone is already linked to your rest of your systems through your Android, your Gmail or Google. How accurate? How safe are these things? We talk about mobile data security and bring your own device security. The system development is the old concept we had of waterfall method, spiral method, agile method, rapid application. Today, nobody does all that. You just download something, install it, and it's ready to go. Pay a subscription, and you're in business. So these are things we need to look at. Now, connecting to this internal controls, the IT general controls, we have to look at what the internal audit, they follow a framework called the COSO framework. It's a committee of sponsoring organizations. I'm sure you've heard this so many times. Now, they have come out, actually, I'm not updating this too much, but at least let's go with the basics. There is a control environment where the controls are put in place. Then somebody does a RCM, risk and control matrix, evaluates, comes up with, yes, this is good, this is bad, this control will work, etc. And then the control activities, what really happens. You know fully well when you have a maker checker, if the checker is a senior person, he's a CFO, somebody senior, he's not going to go through every voucher. He trusts the people below him, and if they say, sir, we have posted the entries, he just clicks OK, so that's done. Then how do we communicate? The earlier speaker told us a lot on the reporting. Now, information and reporting is not just end reports, it is continuous reporting. In fact, in the audit, you will also find if you have an important thing to report, and if you've gone through the LODR, it says if your company is in serious trouble and you noticed it, the management has to put this up within 2 hours on their website. Critical problems, otherwise they're given more time. Now, just imagine a listed company and all headaches. Something happens, there's a strike, there's a fire, some major problem happens, something serious goes wrong, and within 2 hours you got to put it on your website. In fact, they did in Millgrove when there was an unfortunate death of a senior person. They have to inform the shareholders immediately. So, and the capitalists and all the investors, the venture capitalists. So this is becoming a very serious problem. So the communication is not just reports, it's on your websites, it's on your social media, it goes to a lot of other headaches also. Monitoring, of course, that's the continuous controls which you saw. And anyway, there are a lot of monitoring activities today. We try to make the computer monitor as much as possible. So taking each of these and giving it a simple definition in the control environment, this is what the top management should drive. Now we say our tone at the top, but see, this is a cultural issue. So when you look at the tone at the top, in America, North America, Europe, there's a difference. If you're looking at it from Asia, there's a difference because of family concerns. In certain countries like Latin America and Africa, it will be totally different. Now, why am I saying it's different is, according to the FCPA or the Bribery Act in the UK or the US FCPA, if you get auditor gets a decent lunch, it's bribery. But in India or Singapore or Malaysia or any of these countries, if you don't feed the auditor, give him a lunch. I mean, it's like, it's a hospitality issue. It's got nothing to do with bribery. So that's why when I explain this, it's always very difficult. So when you prepare your risk and control matrix, orient it for the locations. That's what you were told in the inaugural, that keynote. The locations become extremely important. Even the first speaker spoke about that. So what is a control environment can differ drastically. You get a diary calendar, it's not a compromise of your integrity. In some countries, they say it is a compromise. So you have to be careful with that. Now, the risk assessment is something, again, what affects things. I mean, see, there is a control and you got some ways of making this happen. What are the hazards, or will the risk materialize? How serious is it? How important is it? Now, sometimes we look at these risks. See, for instance, we are not a very heavily automated country, so we depend on something called migrant labor. So when things go out of control, if the problem is the migrant labor disappears and all your production comes to a halt. Now, this is a completely different problem when, if you're talking about this to your some other country's counterpart, he understands migrant labor as people who migrated from another country and settled down. Like in Europe and the US, they'll think a migrant is someone who came from India or China and settled down. But we think of a migrant as somebody who's come from the next town or another part of the country, and then he suddenly disappears because he's an Indian citizen. He doesn't need passports and green cards and all that. So the risks can be completely different and hazards have to be identified differently, because I've seen a lot of these insurance claims. When the serious motor accidents also, hardly fires happen. But in certain Western countries, when cars bump into each other, they catch fire. So if you put fire at the top of an Indian risk thing, they'll say, why would you even want to look at it? So you have to identify hazards differently, and particularly if you're an MNC or internal auditor, explaining this takes a bit of time. You have to give a lot of explanation. Then comes your control activities. Now we have a lot of policies, procedures, etc. And let me honestly tell you, see, my Hindi is very poor, so I'm trying to learn as much as possible. But when I go, sometimes I come to the other parts of India for the audit, all these policies are in English. And the people down the line don't know English. So have you got them at least on a audio mode for them to listen? And, it's only a compliance. Have you got a policy? Yes. Is it there? Yes. But then how many people are aware of it? Have they understood? We don't know. It's on the internet website. They say you can click here, you'll get it. Even so difficult for the auditor to click and find it. Now, how will an average employee find it? So these are some of the things we always talk about. Let's have a policy, board approved policy, procedures, etc. Now, the point is we need to have a lot of awareness. So we push computer-aided, it's called LMS now, Learning Management System. You try to push this learning to the individuals, have tests, make sure they've understood what the controls are. So what you do is this on the people side, but otherwise you just ask the company to progressively keep programming these controls so that automatically your exceptions are getting generated, like you were told in your predictive controls and predictive data analytics. When most of the time we are not doing the historic analysis anymore, moving forward. Now this is where our communication is very important for the financial and operations. So today most of the internal auditors focus on the financial internal audit. Basically it's done by a machine. And if you look at the process flow or the organization flow, accounting has become more a back office operation. That's why it's easy to outsource. They want to concentrate on the core competence. So the operations take the entire forefront, whether it's power generation or whether it's logistics. So the auditor has to focus more on the operations, and most of the data there will be non-financial. This could be bad quality of coal, it could be wind is failing, essentially a wind turbine company, a wind generation company. They have this, India, we don't have other derivatives, so we cannot insure against high wind, low wind season. So There are a lot of issues out here, like builders, they may not get steel or sand. Are we looking at alternatives for the construction process? There are a lot of things which the auditor has to point out, and some of these, as I told you, I mean, that's an extreme example I gave you of 2 hours reporting on the website. But there are other things, like you may want to inform the top management or the audit committee that certain things have gone wrong, that your finance exchange rates are really bad and you're not hedged anything, or gone for derivatives. Okay, there are so many things you would like to point out. Not just the routine reports, also immediate problems. The monitoring is, of course, we will have both people and machines monitoring. Software controls, no problem. They're called application controls. But if you're getting output, computer-generated output, it's called IT-related controls, IT-dependent controls. Then you have to look at logs. Normally, you pull them out and analyze it using Excel or Power BI or some small analytic tool, simple tool you could use. So you don't have to rush off for the very big, complicated tools for data analytics. You could just do them on simple things. But the only thing is we need to keep monitoring all these outputs and controls so that we know whether this anything is going wrong, its exceptions, etc. We need to know immediately. Now, COSO has come out with a framework for the audit, and just cutting straight to the principles, 17 principles, out of which we need only the 11th principle, the one where I'm moving the cursor. It says selects and develops general controls over technology. This comes under the control activity. So the others we can just ignore, at least for today's class. Let's concentrate only on the IDGC, which is one, you got to select, and second, you got to develop the controls. Okay, when we say develop, auditor cannot develop and give an assurance on the same thing, but most of the time you're a consultant. When we go to these areas, you're no longer the internal auditor, you're really an internal advisor. So I'm sure you will bring a lot of value to the table when we are looking at these IDGCs. That's only 11.11. So when we look at this, okay, the COBIT is another standard which I will quickly compare. COBIT is from ISACA, this is from COSO, so they're two different bodies. And we also have our IASB, and we'll quickly run through that also. So COBIT is trying to tell us on the IT-based controls. They are general controls which are computer-oriented. And if you look at the information ID governance, you got a lot of standards on this. You got the IDAF, you got the IDIL if it's service-oriented. You got the COPC is also service-oriented. You may be coming across, there were so many standards. People get their certifications. Different countries, different businesses. Let's like ISO, they go for a lot of controls, a lot of certification. So when you're talking about IT governance, you're talking about just like it's a subset of corporate governance. You're talking about the computerized environment. You're not talking only machines. So when we talk about business continuity management, it is not just the machines, it also means a lot of support. Now, if you're pushing money through the banking system and something goes wrong with your systems and that comes up, but your connectivity to the banking system doesn't come up, then how does the business proceed? You can't take payments. You're selling airline tickets or selling something online. Your systems have come up because of your VCM, but what about the payment gateway? If that doesn't come up, then you can't take money. So there are a lot of issues out there. So if you look at it generally, we talk about the security framework, which has become very important, not because of the regulators, but because of hackers. When we teach when we teach computer security, it's the hackers' tools which actually auditors use. It's not the other way around. They come up with the tools first, and then we use it for the audit. If you're learning hacking, then obviously you're better off because you know all the vulnerabilities and which tools to use. Then we talk about IT strategy. This has to be aligned with your business strategy. That's a very important requirement. Otherwise, the IT doesn't keep up with the business. The structure of the organization, particularly when there's no more IT department, general manager, IT, computer head, nobody says all gone to the cloud and it's disappeared. Policies and procedures for covering all the areas, including awareness to the employees of what they are supposed to do, particularly with this increased social engineering attacks where people talk to people, they phone people, they imitate, they send phishing mails, becomes more very important. Then, of course, the information has to be guarded. India has a privacy bill, not yet an act, but we have the IT Act, and we have the GDPR, and we have ever so many acts, EU directives, the King rules from the African thing. We have got lots of rules, so we have to watch out for this, keeping data safe and assuring its integrity. Then IT contracting. Now, when you subcontract your mark sheets, let us say, or printing your dividend warrants, and something goes wrong, now who is responsible? So, IT contracting is not just AMCs and repairs and software licenses. It goes beyond that. There are all the controls monitoring, right from temperature, humidity, up to things like who has got access, how are we changing, if RPA or robotics has introduced, bots are introduced, chatbots, how are they being monitored? So many issues you need to look at. Even small NBFCs and small finance banks are going for chatbots. They're not hiring people. Of course, the risk management and the VCM makes all this is a part of your governance, the IT governance. Now, I will skip this slide because it's basically what I've already explained. Now, let's go into the controls part of it, the IT controls part of it. Now, automated controls, you have no problem. They're all, but make sure they're working correctly. I mean, you still have to check them. These are software programmed controls, so they do the job properly. IT dependent, or what we call IT related, is you get outputs from logs, audit trails, then the auditor analyzes and finds out. It's the manual controls that give a lot of trouble because these are humans. Humans do a lot of things either knowingly or unknowingly. They share passwords, they take second copies of printouts, they don't update certain things, they don't wait for approvals, or they get approvals pre-approved somewhere. Or in the maker checker, I make, somebody approves, he makes, I approve. So it's like a mutual thing which is not safe. Segregation of duties, ever so many issues here. So the more you automate and go for logs, the less you depend on people committing crime which goes undetected. Okay, why are we having controls? The basic control is detective, which means something is wrong, it makes a note, then the auditor goes, checks it. Then if something is wrong, it doesn't allow it to happen, that's preventive. But then if something is wrong and it rectifies it, that is corrective. So more of machine learning, we say AI, but actually it's more of machine learning, both structured and unstructured, or supervised and unsupervised. Corrective controls have started increasing. Now, auditors should be in a position to evaluate the algorithm of the machine learning software the algorithm they have put in software, or he has to have sufficient test data to check that he has covered all possible situations. Again, should he be a programmer? No, not necessary. All we need to understand is structure of how supervised and unsupervised learning works. It's more of a statistical algorithm. So if you know that, that's more than enough. The other question is, they asked me, should an auditor be a mathematician come statistician? Yes, that is true. Yes, we need the knowledge. Do I need programming knowledge? No. In fact, we used to have maths in the CA long ago for inter, then it went to entrance, and then I guess it's parked right now. But anyway, you can take some time to brush up on maths and statistics. Okay, then to do the audit itself, you understand the IT environment, the usual thing, you perform interviews, walkthroughs, documentation, look at the existing controls, and then you also validate these existing controls. So I'll just quickly run through these points we said in the beginning. Physical and logical access. These are three tenets which we use: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. What it means is keep the data safe. It doesn't go to unwanted people. Make sure it's not modified, so the right people are always seeing this data, and also make sure that we have got the data available whenever it is needed by those who need to know, need to use. So if we look at that, I think we have enough assurance on this. The development, system development has completely changed because I said it's become almost outsourced today. Even people don't write their own software also, they buy it. Or they hire software companies to write the software. So instead of concentrating on the entire life cycle, the auditor concentrates more on the change management. And this is where one of the client's requirements is, do I have changes in my system which have not been authorized? Because the traditional audit was you take the change management, then go and check if that's like a voucher to cash book to voucher. If you take only the vouchers and check the cash book, then it's fine. That's one way of doing it. The other is you look at all the cash book entries and then try to find entries in the cash book which don't have vouchers. We call it vouching tracing, okay. But anyway, the point is almost similar to that. So now you take all the changes in the software from your last audit period to the current period and then check with the change management. So which means you need a tool to run through the software, identifying changes from last time to current period. That's what I said earlier. It's just repeating the same thing. Of course, there are standards for all these. There are ever so many standards. So as we keep on studying, we find newer and newer standards. For the licensing part, you may have to look at 19770. That's the ISO standard for the software asset management, including licenses and entitlement and rights. That is under draft, but 19,771 and 2 are already cleared. This was the IDGC. We came from COSO. Now, where you focus on is dependency on the use of technology. Technology is also attendance recording, biometric, simple things like your attendance marking through your mobile phones, right from there up to your big time systems which are connected up to whatever credit card companies and payment gateways and so on. Second is you also have to identify the technology infrastructure control activities. Now, technology, we break it up into two. One is your infrastructure for the building, wiring, cabling, etc., which is a separate standard. Your computer software, etc., which is a separate standard. And how do these two interact? So let's see what's the connection. If I got something working on a cloud hoster, and he has got what is called multi-tenant, that is on the same hardware box, he runs virtualized instances for company A, company B, and company C. What is the guarantee company B won't be able to look into the data or processes of company A? They're all on the same physical box. Then we talk about sandbox, etc. You use tools. Basically, most of the time we use tools to identify this. Then we also need to work on the security process and how they implement and so on. And then how do they buy this technology and who implements it? Now, for instance, we hear some major country level things like 5G, China is not allowed. Okay, that's fine. But then we say they are bringing and planting some software. But most of the companies which buy software, they don't know where they are getting it from. Now, the person supplying it to you, I'm not saying it is true, but just take it as an example. Now, you buy Microsoft Word or we buy something Tally or something. Where is a guarantee that didn't plant spyware into it, which can keep pushing your data out for certain purposes? Now, maybe it's important, maybe it's not important, but if it is important, then you need to see the vendors, how much control does he have over your system after the implementation is complete. For instance, SAP, monitors are the newer ones, SAP, SAP, that's Suite 4, or even R3 also. They still monitor your installations via the internet connection, so you can't cut that off. And even your updates, if you got them automated updates, Microsoft servers are monitoring your Windows machine. So what is actually being monitored and how effective, dangerous, you'll have to look at it. Now, I know the slide may not be very clear, so I'll just enlarge it a little bit. So what we are doing is we're just looking at a quick picture on how do we look at these controls. To make it very simple, same thing what we said, gain a full understanding of the system, then identify or break it up into the infrastructure, personal computing, which is the end users, outsourced work, and how the governance is taking place. And thereafter, all these steps, this is like access controls, application control activities, information processing objectives, the ID general controls, and then the principle 11, This would give us a clear picture of how the IDGC works. I'm sharing this presentation, so you don't have to worry about the presentation. You will get this copy. Now, when you scope your controls, when you have multiple systems, when you have networks, database, operating systems, some owned, some not owned, some external, you need to have a very elaborate program, which we'll quickly look at. I will skip this slide. I will go straight to our own controls. Okay, so see, when you are looking at the outsource, I just thought I'll mention this because there is a bit of a confusion on these external certificates. From the Indian audit standards, you have to look at 402, 3402 or 402. Now they talk about getting a certificate from whoever is handling your data outside, where they issue certificates. One is based on the financial reporting, the IFC part. Two, which is on the internal operations, the technical part, security, availability, etc. And three, certificate three is actually a web page trust certificate, saying that it's an honest web page and whatever policies they have on privacy, etc. will be followed. Three is more or less gone. After SSL and TSL, 3 is not there, but 1 and 2 are very important. Type 1 is at a point of time, like they have a year-end balance sheet. So you can take it at a point of time. Type 2 is over a reporting period. Internal auditors require SOC 1 and 2, type 2. They need both financial and operational, and they need it over a period of time. Statutory auditors will require SOC 1 and type 1, which is only financial at a point in time. So now if we look at the standard from our institute, what I'd like to look at is, see, this is the risk, this is 315. So this is taken off Facebook. This particular person, he posts these pictures. Like I work mostly with mind maps, which are like pictures. This looked more easier to work with. So I just took this. Mind maps are useful for exams. These are useful for our classes, okay? But right now, when you work with the environment, what are the risks your IT imposes? What are the areas you'll examine? And this goes into your COSO's way of looking at the risk. So your control environment. The rest of it is risk management, etc. How you do it, what are the assertions, etc. This is here. Then these, of course, we understand. This is traditional internal audit. I just focus on the CIS environment, the COSO environment, and how these risks are identified, reported, whatever we saw in the earlier session, that holds good. Now, if you're working with SOX, which is also very common in India and most of the MNCs, then you need only the following sections. So you can work on the 302, which should be for the financial reports. 404, of course, is the internal controls. 409 is the real-time disclosures, and these are you have disclosed the public, not the Indian public, the American public, which are SOX is American Sarbanes-Oxley. Then you have criminal penalties for altering documents. The problem is documents includes electronic documents. So how are you going to sign them? How do you ensure security, digital signatures? There's so many things you'll have to go look at. Then corporate responsibility for financial reports, which of course the LODR is imposed now on the Indian scenario also. Now, I know this picture won't be clear. So what I'll do is I'll just change my screen and just open up, I'll open up this picture and I'll just change the, okay. So now the screen you see on your, here, I'll just enlarge it. It's only a small fragment which we are looking at. Now, COSO principles and components we know, the control environment, risk assessment, etc., whatever we mentioned. Now, this side is the COBIT processes. Now, this is the internal auditors standards. These are the technology standards from ISACA. Now, they have got various things like this EDM and APO and etc. I'll just make it very fast. Now, the governance functions, EDM 1 talks about governance framework, setting and maintenance. Now, how many of these COSO standards, COSO principles will have to be checked? So I know this vertical is not readable. So I'll just scroll down. It's only an image. I just pasted it here. Now, if you look at this image, just making it bigger. This we can see now. EDM1, we know all this framework for the governance. The control environment, it says demonstrates commitment to integrity. Yes, you have to cover that. Exercises oversight of development, etc. You cover that. But when you come to something else, like risk assessment specifies suitable objectives, you don't have to cover it. So if you prepare a table like this, or these tables are generally available from the internet, just check it up once for the Indian standards. Just correct them, because most of what you find on the internet are the retired ones. That means they don't use them anymore. The active ones, they'll ask you for money. So that's a problem you have. So most of the time, what you would do is you would like to work with take the retired ones. They're free of cost. Nothing changes here. Almost COSO is up to date, and ERM COVID is also up to date, COVID 5. You can just fill this up, make the corrections, and that will be your guiding thing for these audits. So I just wanted to show you the connection between the COVID and your internal audit, the principles of the internal audit. So again, just quickly changing the screen. So that we can. Okay, so now we have established that yes, we have IT governance, we have all these principles of COSO, we also follow COVID, and then we have this kind of matrix which gives us a relationship between COVID technology and the audit, internal audit. So these two are mapped. Now, when you look at all these acts, some of them are American, some of them will be Indian. So, and of course, in forensic also it plays an important role, because your evidence should stand test in a court of law. So generally get some legal help when you're preparing the evidence. And operational risk management is also very important. Enterprise risk management is much bigger. And this EHS you were told about in the earlier speakers spoke a lot about this. So I'm just covering this from a global perspective, but you can specify this for India. From the IAA, you have the G tags. Unfortunately, they retired the D tag, these G tags, so all of them are freely available. You can download it. And these cover, in fact, they're very useful. They're like questionnaires, checklists. So you can use them for your internal audit of technology. Now that's retired, it's openly available. Anybody can take them. The IAA went in for something called GATE, which is a little more higher level, but in India it's probably not important at this point. This global framework committee is already formed. The members. So what I would say is this committee is over. It's leave it. But whenever they're forming new committees internationally, OECD, we have the OCEG, we have a lot of bodies out there which deal with these various problems. In fact, now transfer pricing on electronic business is one of the major things going through on your transfer pricing on the economic forum. You could participate in those, because some of the Indian companies now, they have started selling goods internationally, even tailoring services, medical health services, tuitions, online coaching classes. And once they get foreign income, one is your GST local laws, and then of course you have the transfer pricing issues coming up, particularly when they have tied up or partnered with somebody, what we call related parties or something. So outside, we need to look at that. So anyway, I just show you one quick thing. One is, if we are taking one of these, let's say access to programs, this white box here. One is the unauthorized access to programs, etc. This is the risk, the improper changes. Then the objective is to keep it restricted. So when you prepare your, go through all your risk controls, you'll go through all these. What do they have, policies, etc., till they finally your network security. Most of the time, we spend a lot of time on password, but that's becoming biometric. So we need to look at other things like privileged users and network vulnerabilities and so on. Audit logs play a very important role. And when you prepare your, it's not a full course of RCM, just a quick thing. Now, when you have user area provisioning, what is the existing control, a formal process for granting the access to the system, etc. Then review the evidence. Is there a process? Is it really there? Is it authorized? Then user process deprovisioning when he's dismissed or is transferred or changes. Then what is the process for disabling? Is there a process? Yes, there is. Then check whether the list of users who are disabled have actually been disabled. And also check whether these, after they're disabled, have they been subsequently enabled? Some companies do that. They just fool the auditor and then they put it back. So you have to be very careful. Like this, you can go through a lot of these, maybe on some program on RCMs later. So this is what I wanted to say. I know it's been a quick run through, but okay, just to quickly recap, we have these IT general controls. We follow COSO for the internal audit point of view and COBIT for the technology point of view. IT governance plays an important role in all this. Then we take our own standards. We got 340, 2402, we can look it up. SSA 18 is for the US, so we don't need that. Only a CPA can sign that. So then we also look at our 315, the audit standard. There are a lot of audit standards. We can go through those. Some of them will be updated as and when required by the IASB. And once you are up to date on all this information, then you prepare a matrix, COBIT, COSO, including your Indian standards also, or we have a lot of standards on internal audit. Those also you have to go through. And once you're done all that, then you prepare your checklist. There are plenty available. Then you get started. I showed you the GTAG. That's only one of them. Plenty of them are there. If you need any help, please reach out. I mean, of course, I do consulting work, but I also teach a lot from almost 40 years now. I've been teaching. So please reach out. I will help you with whatever I know. I'll definitely tell you. What I don't know, of course, I'll have to read up and tell you. So I need some time to catch up, because some of the requirements from Africa, those who are working in Africa, companies, software companies in Africa and South America, laws are different there. So I just only know South African stuff because some of the Indian companies work there. Other countries are giving me time to read up. So thank you very much, and I hope I have stayed within my time limit. Thank you very much, and it's over to Ms. Ahuja, so I've stopped sharing now.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. It was a really impressive presentation. Our next speaker of this knowledge-filled session is Mr. Ashish Singhal. He is an MBA from IIM Lucknow and an MCA from Burdwan University. He also holds enormous certifications such as CISA, CDPSC, PMP, AII, and MCP. He has 18 years of management consultancy and IT experience working with top global consultancy companies such as Accenture, Genpact, and Tata Consultancy Services. He has worked with diverse set of domains like finance, audit, operations, strategy, insurance, and in multiple geographies like US, Europe, Southeast Asia, and India. Currently, he is MD and CEO of Inavi Consultancy, an IT and management consultancy company. He has authored many articles related to automation, data analysis, and process strategies. I would request Mr. Singhal to share his field of vision on the topic information technology and chartered accountants. A handshaking. The dice is over to you, sir.
Well, thank you, Rhythm. That was a really vivid introduction. Thanks for that. And also, I would like to thank Mr. Singh, who has put up a very clear summary of all the three topics here today. And Mr. Kaiser has put up a very clear, precise context of the session. Along with this, Mr. Paul, like as always, like it's the IT General Control session was like knowledge-filled session, I would say. And Mr. Devang, yeah, he just deep dived into the data analytics and internal audit and the corresponding field. Well, a very good evening to all my chartered accountants and other professionals who are hearing me tonight. And first of all, I'd like to thank you all for giving me this opportunity to interact with you, because chartered accountant is a very elite community to interact with me. And one more thing, like businesses can run without IT, but businesses cannot run without chartered accountant. You do everything and at last the auditor will come and stand in front of you. So before I start my session, and there's no session I have, I just want to talk and discuss about how technology can help you. But before I start this session, I would like to request everyone hearing me to understand what precisely Mr. Kaiser has told. Technology is a support to us. Okay, you are not supposed to learn technology. You are supposed to use technology. So technology is at your service. So I like today's session is based on my experience working with chartered accountants, working with CA firm, working with organizations, helping organizations doing internal audit under various IT controls and everything. What I have understood, a chartered accountant always say, "भैया मेरे को नहीं आता है." अरे क्या नहीं आता है? अरे टेक्नोलॉजी नहीं समझ में आती है मुझे. Even though institute have put up a very good, a very vivid curriculum over technology, they are also briefed about CAT tools. But unfortunately, I hear maximum of the chartered accountants saying technology nahi aati hai. Are we need to understand that we don't need to learn technology. We need to use technology. We need to understand technology. That's it. Being a chartered accountant, you need to be aware of technology. Okay. So with this, I will request you all to just free up your mind. Don't think for the next 45 minutes that you don't know technology. I'm not going to teach you anything. I'm just, you know everything. I'm just going to make you aware of technology, make you aware of the technology which is beside you, make you aware of the tools which you are beside you. But you might not be able to discern them. You might be putting a blind eye to them, or your mind is saying again the same thing that I don't know. So from today, after today's 45 minutes of session, I would request and I'll be glad if all chartered accountants hearing me would say, I know, and above that, I can know. Okay, so with this, I would like to start my session today. So I don't have any session today, actually. I have a story to tell you. What's the story about? The story is about a chartered accountant, a life of a chartered accountant. Okay, so I will just tell you a story. I'll tell you how he progressed in his life, how he progressed in his profession, and in the process, taking out the cues from his life, we'll be able to understand how he used technology for his profession and for organization's benefit. Okay, so all participants, let me onboard you. Let me start my story, the story of a chartered accountant. Okay. So there lived a chartered accountant, and he started his own practice. So he was very happy, and he was all set for a bright career ahead. And in his journey, he got a very big assignment from one of the organizations. And he started working days and nights for the assignment. He put up his all energy. He put up everything he had so that he can make this first assignment a successful one. And yes, he was as successful as always. And there came the presentation day. He was all set with his presentation. He was all set with his analysis. He was all set with all he had worked over the last few weeks. And yes, he was about to give the presentation, but unfortunately, his laptop crashed. Oh my God, now what to do? He didn't have any backup. He lost all the data he had. He was the proprietor of the organization as he has just started. He didn't have anybody to support him. So what is he supposed to do? Well, he was completely dejected at this point of time. And he ultimately resorted to the invisible good old friend. Well, I don't need to name it. At the same time, fortunately, another chartered accountant joined him on the table, and his name was Batman. Yeah, why Batman? Because the chartered accountants are superheroes. Yeah, they are ubiquitous. They are always present everywhere. So I would name them after superheroes. So this Batman told him that, why are you worrying? What happened to you? He told him the entire story. And he said, hey man, why didn't you use cloud? Cloud, what's that? So then Batman started him and told him about what the cloud is. So let me take you to the cloud. Yeah, let me take you to the cloud. So you might be knowing what the cloud is. cloud is just a storage model which is being provided by a third-party provider who manages and operates data storage as a service. We need to please emphasize on the words data storage as a service. So what does this mean precisely? Well, cloud storage is a model that stores data on the internet. Where is the data stored? Data is stored on in simple language. I'll just try to make you understand. A data is stored on a server which a third party is managing, and whenever you want your data or whenever you want the storage, they are providing you. So it's anytime, anywhere. Why anytime? It's on the internet. You can put on your internet and you can access data. There's no problem. And you can access data anywhere. You can access data from your laptop. You can access data from your tablet. You can access data from your mobile. You can access the data from everywhere, anywhere. I'm again emphasizing on few keywords. Anytime, anywhere. Now, why I have already told you why anywhere. It's anytime. Okay, so, but what is the benefit you are? Let's go back to our Superman example. He worked relentlessly, he worked without tiredness, and ultimately he lost his data. He could have backed up this data in a cloud. And ultimately, even if his laptop crashes, he could access the cloud from internet, even from the presentation room, and he could have shown his analysis. So this is what is the best benefit of cloud. Now, one would say, well, very good. Why can't I manage my own cloud? You are all free to do this. But do you have those resources? Do you have that much money? Let's say, again, get back to our example of our Superman. He just started his profession. He just started his practice. He didn't have that much of resources that he could put in. But he could have easily gone he could have easily gone to Microsoft and would have bought their cloud, would have brought OneDrive that's come in 1,000 and 1,200 of rupees per year. That is even 100 rupees per month, which is nothing. He lost everything. So we need to understand that where is cloud helping us? Cloud is helping us. We are paying as we go. What do we mean by that? Let's say today I want a 500 GB of space. I can buy that. Tomorrow morning, I need to put up more data. In 5 seconds, I can increase my cloud space from 500 GB to 1 day. So it is pay as use. You can time to deployment is very fast. You can do anything, everything. You can buy your services as you go. Now, what are the benefits if we see the information management, the centralization of information? It is automatic tiering. Now, what do we mean by automatic tiering? So basically, you can obviously tire your less sensitive data. You can basically classify your data in sensitive, insensitive, confidential, and other data. And you can use your cloud or you can structure your cloud accordingly. There are, if you would have heard the name personal vault. This is now even the antivirus like McAfee are providing personal vault. What are personal vault? Personal vault are especially big BitLocker logged folders, even in your cloud, which even if you would like to access that personal vault, you will have to use some second level of authentication mechanism, like OTP on your mobile, like the Authenticator app on your mobile. So even if that is a multi-level security. So unless you are using multiple way of authentication, you are unable to enter into your personal vault. So these are the various locking for compliance which you can see. Well, at this point of time, I would like to pause. People say cloud, and it's a very, very common concept, I would say. People say cloud, and people say cloud computing. But do we understand exactly what's the difference between these two? Now, why I'm emphasizing here is to understand the difference is that, again, every service, as I told you, is pay as you service. Okay, so now what is cloud computing? Well, try to understand. A cloud storage is just storing your data. It is not doing anything else. You are just storing your data. You are accessing your data. You are downloading, you are uploading, you are using. But rest all other processing, whatever you are doing in your own applications. So if you have a Microsoft Excel installed, you are doing everything in Microsoft installed on your system. If you have a Word, if you have a PPT, whatever you are doing because you have those apps. You are not doing any processing when you are only storing data. Whereas cloud computing is more about processing. It's more about processing your data. It's more about doing unconventional analysis, which you would not have been able to do just with a common laptop, which everyone in this world use. So every time you cannot carry a data analytics laptop, every time you cannot carry servers with you, you cannot carry a i10 or a 32 GB stuff with you. You cannot even afford that. You cannot even buy a server and keep in your office, or you cannot afford to maintain it. What will you do? You will then resort to cloud computing. Cloud computing enable you process your data over cloud in real-time basis. Okay, so that means what? Your cloud storage is passive, whereas your cloud computing is active. Why passive? You have stored a 300 GB of data today. You might not access that data even for years to come. Fine, but still you have stored it. You are using the storage and you are supposed to pay, and there is no harm in doing that, let me tell you. But if you are not using your cloud computing, and if you are paying for your cloud computing processing power or processing applications or processing services, then you are just wasting your money, you are wasting your time. So cloud computing is an active stuff. Don't use it until and unless it is required. Don't use this for passive activity. Okay. Now, as a chartered accountant, you would be saying, why Ashish is telling me all this active and passive? Because as we have already seen, the eminent speakers, Mr. Paul and Mr. Devang, have clearly mentioned the thing that the time is changing, the landscape is changing, and chartered accountants are being involved in a lot of analysis for their profession, also as a consultant, and for their running own organizations also. So these are the stuffs which are really going to be very, very helpful to you. Well, we also need to understand, as an individual, you can own a cloud. Like I have my own cloud. Though I am running an organization, I am on my own cloud. I have my organization's cloud. I have my business account, but I have my personal account also. I can use it. But I would not like to use my cloud computing services for my personal use. So why I am telling you all this? Well, you are a chartered accountant. We need to understand in this session that I always have two perspectives here. A chartered accountant is the only professional who is bestowed with two kinds of duties or responsibilities. One is your usage responsibility, the other are your audit responsibility. So this elite community is very different from other professions. So why I am telling you all this? Let's say tomorrow you are there for an audit, IT general control audit, as to spoken by Mr. Paul. So what would you look into it? The first thing you will look into is the program, is the cloud program or the server program. So you need to ascertain whether the strategic objective of the organization demands a cloud computing. If not, and if you are paying for it, you are just wasting your resources. You are just wasting your company important things. So we need to understand the cloud computing and cloud difference so that we can ascertain whether a particular program has been executed as per the business objective. Well, all of you must have read today's newspaper and also the WhatsApp now, the better news giver, that the Domino's lost almost 60,000 or something like of the customer data and something like that. So nothing comes free in this world, especially the technology never comes free. It's always vulnerable to theft. It's always vulnerable to breaches. It's always vulnerable to malintentions. And cloud is a very favorite topic for hackers. So though I am telling you about the cloud, but we also need to understand that if there are some important confidential documents which we cannot store in cloud, then that has to be appropriately backed up in a bit logged folders, in a bit logged data drive, or on a hard disk or whatever. But that has to be properly backed up. That needs to be properly secured. Now, again, we also need to understand that as a cloud program, whether you as a professional are using, because again, the chartered accountants and the CA firms are very, very particular, and the institute is very particular about the security, about the confidentiality, because the entire profession speaks about integrity. So integrity is at the core. So also we need to understand, let's for example, I would say I was doing a general insurance company's assignment, and the first thing, if the first requirement of the company was, if you are using a cloud, that has to be hosted in India. Okay, so we need to understand what are the compliance issues while using cloud, what are the regulatory compliance. So data sovereignty, there's a concept called data sovereignty which is coming up. So the data which you are using is not your own. Let me tell you very frankly, the data which a company is using, let's for an insurance company. The insurance company is, what is the data available with the insurance company? It is the individual's data. Who are individuals? Individuals are the citizen of country. Okay, so it is not individuals' data. It is the data of the nation. There comes the concept of data sovereignty. So, well, we need to very well understand what are the data localization laws. It's not only about storage. It's not only about data sovereignty. It's also about information flow. Well, the information is air now. Like it's in the air. Like we know from the border movie that Panchi, भवरे इनको कोई रोक नहीं पाता है because वो हवा के साथ बहते हैं. In the same way, the information is flowing in the air, man. So how can you stop information from flowing? Can you stop a WhatsApp coming from a friend in US, or can you stop a WhatsApp for that matter coming from a friend in Pakistan? You cannot do it. So information. So once you are using this cloud, once the data, you also need to understand that cloud is hosted somewhere else. So once the data is there, you need to understand whether you are allowed for transferring that data to the recipient country. You need to basically check the compliances. You need to check the regulatory rules or the regulatory guidance, whether this can be done. So these are the various compliance issues which needs to be taken care of, whether you are in audit or you are using it or you are doing internal audit. These are the things which you need to ascertain before you can approve, before you can validate, before you can go ahead with a cloud program. Well, so we are a team of auditors. Yes, I am also an auditor. I am a CISA, and I've been doing IT audits and various kind of other audits for the companies, and I have been helping them. So what are the, this is the KPMG has put up, this is an excerpt from one of their report, and they've put up a very beautifully the 5 key risk dimensions while using your cloud. So once we are using cloud, we also need to understand what are the different types of cloud. So I have told you Microsoft, you know Amazon, AWS and other clouds. Those all are public clouds. They are being managed. Microsoft is giving you also access. Microsoft is giving somebody also access. So that is a public cloud. Who has stopped you to buy a server and create a cloud for you? You can give me an access to, and you can sell it to me. There are various private cloud providers. So you can also have your private cloud also. It is nothing but the server client model, which we are traditionally using it. What is private external? As Paul has said, the data centers are being now outsourced, is being managed by somebody else. So though the entire infrastructure, the physical infrastructure, we also need to understand physical infrastructure and virtual infrastructure. So cloud, though they are using lots of TBs of server, they are giving you 1 TB of space. So they are not dedicating a separate server for you. They have hundreds of TBs of space. From there, they are giving you 1 TB. But there can be a scenario where a private external provider is giving you a specialized 10 TB of server only for you. He has just kept up a small server for you. So that is what is known as private external. So when you are auditing, when you are into internal audit, and when you are auditing your cloud program, what do you need to discuss? What do you need to understand? You need to understand, as we have already said, the regulatory environment. It doesn't matter much to the private internal. Now, what is private internal? Sorry to mention that. Private internal is something you have bought up a server and you're kept in your office. So it's you who is accessing, no third party is managing it. That is considered to be the most secure. Nothing is secured in this world. Paul Survey saying the hackers and messages interpretation and everything is happening. So even if you are accessing your own company server, again, the information is in the air and anybody can intercept it. So, but still, when you are using a private cloud, you are better off. You are using traditional computing, so you are better off in that way. But when you are using a private external, you have to understand the leakage. You have to understand the intention of the third party provider also. With public, yes, access control becomes the most important one. Also, what becomes more important is that what you are keeping in cloud, where you are keeping in cloud. So all these are the various considerations which you need to understand. One most important consideration which we need to take into account while using cloud is limitations on technology. Microsoft technology is only in the hands of Microsoft. It's not in my hand. So if you want to deploy something your own tailor-made, if I want to write a program and deploy in Python, I can do it. But if I want to create another platform itself, I cannot do it on the cloud. So again, you need to understand whether you want to use the cloud. If yes, what are its limitations? Okay, now comes the operational. Now, why I'm using Microsoft AWS? Because they are the big giants. You know their service quality will be better. You know they are not going out of the business. But there are even very good providers, the small providers who are providing cloud and personalized services for that. But yes, you need to take care of the reliance, you need to take care of the service, you need to take care of the various financial aspects also. So these are the 5 key risk areas which you need to consider when you are using cloud. And cloud is nothing but a server. You should use it, yes, but you should use it carefully. So with this, like cloud, our Superman, Mr. Chartered Accountant, went ahead. He now started using cloud. He again went ahead with the assignment. He used the assignment. He completed the assignment and he was very, very happy. So as the day progressed, he just went ahead and he grew in the profession. As he grew in the profession, again, he got a very good assignment, a very good internal outsourcing assignment from one of the esteemed organization. And this was an insurance organization. So he went ahead and he started his assignment. So the moment he started his assignment and he asked for the data, he was basically handed over a data warehouse login ID. Well, what is that? He didn't know that. So he started on accessing it. Once he entered, he was bombarded with millions and trillions of records. He didn't know what to do. Well, by this time he grew and he also had partners. But unfortunately, those partners were again those kind of chartered accountants who said, we don't understand technology. He was dejected. He said, how do I grow? Means I don't know what to do. I've never encountered this problem. Hey man, hey God, what to do? And again, he resorted to his old good invisible friend, which I don't need to name. Was the depression relapsed and he was sitting dejected. Fortunately, again, the chartered accountant, Mr. Beckman, came and he again heard the entire story. And he said, oh man, why are you worrying? You are living in the age of data analytics. Oh, data analytics? What's that? No, let me again give you a session on data analytics and then the both continue. Well, what is data analytics? Well, people, you will find sessions telling about data analytics, but what exactly is data analytics? And there are 2 parts to it, which we don't understand, which we don't appreciate. We need to appreciate that data analytics is about data and analyzing those data. I have tried to differentiate it. On the left side, you have what we are doing with the data. Once we are done with the data, then the analysis phase starts on. So going back to our good old Superman, Mr. Chartered Accountant, he was bombarded with the data. So what he would do with the data? He would first inspect that data. So like for the insurance, he would inspect the policy data. He would inspect the revenue data or whatever. So he would inspect the data. Then he would need to understand that what data he requires and what he doesn't require. So he would then query only those data which he needs, or he will not basically query the data which he don't need. So with this, he'll be on the second step. Once he has got the data, then he needs to transform that data. Transform into what? We need to understand. I am not changing any data here. I cannot transfer a user data. I cannot transform a policy data. I can only transform that data so that I can decipher some meaningful insights out of it. So that is what is transformation. Transformation has to be done when you have identified your data. Then you need to understand what you want out of it. For that, if required, you need to take data from one place, you need to put the data in the other place, and you need to then clog the vaults. So that is what transformation means. Once you have done transforming your data, nothing in this world, like you are seeing the pictographic representations which I am giving you. In the same way, if you really need some insight for data, you need to model it, you need to present it, you need to use data visualization to present it not to yourself and to the management also. So that is what is known as modeling. Now you have data on which you can do a decision making. How do you do a decision making? You basically derive meaningful insights from that data, and then basically you do a decision modeling over this. Now, again, a chartered accountant asked me in one of my earlier sessions that, okay, you have told me much very technical stuff, Ashish, the cleaning, transforming, modeling. What do I have to do with it? So I told him, ki, boss, if you were bombarded with millions and billions of data, would you be able to even sample it? So in audit, we use a very common word called sample. Will you be able to sample it? Even will you be able to know what is there, what is not there? He was speechless. I said, now the data analytics will give you enhanced coverage. If used properly, the entire population can be analyzed, and you can find out the outliers from those data. So this is what very important, which comes handy in the audit. And again, I'm telling you, don't only go through this session with the intention of audit. Also, you need to understand how do you use it. So again, you need to wear two hats at least, the user and the auditor. The better user you are, the better informed auditor also you are. So you need to make a balance out of it. Okay. So now we have got the data analysis. I have just told you one. Let me tell you, data analytics is everywhere. Now it's nothing new also, We have been using spreadsheet modeling. We have been using spreadsheets even before Excel. When Excel came and it brought into many analysis, we use pivot. But how many of us appreciate that even pivot is a data analytics tool? Yes, pivot is a data analytics tool. Many of you might be knowing. Even if you go and see the tab in Excel, there are other data analytics tools like scenario analysis, which seldom anyone use unless you know it. So what I want to make you understand is that data analytics is nothing new for my dear chartered accountant friends. You as an, I'm telling you, I've been an Excel trainer, and I would say I would accept it without any this thing that I have been like, I really fear giving chartered accountants a session on Excel because they're so good at it. Boss, if you can be good at it, Excel, if you can be good at pivot, then how is it possible that you are not good at data analytics? Yes, you are good at data analytics. The only caveat is that you don't know you are good at it. So we need to understand. I'm just trying to make you understand that please embrace these technologies. Is nothing new. You have been using it, and if given a little bit of time, you will be able to understand what these. You need not to be a senior software developer for this. So where we find data analytics application, it's in accounts payable, phantom vendors. Oh my goodness, where are those? How will, if you don't use data analytics, how is it possible to even find phantom vendors? You don't know. So you need to understand where are these vendors lying, which does not exist at all, and lots of money are going. Conflict of interest. So how would you, if you don't have data analytics, how would you pick up those contracts which are above the normal contract pricing. How would you look up this? How would you ascertain that the conflict of interest, like we did a lot of conflict of interest with the stakeholders of the management. So how will you ensure that these are not there? These are the areas which will go untouched, unidentified, unobserved. As an audit professional, you have to use data analytics for this. In the same way, for on the revenue side, the sales order, the various kind of product pricing and all those, the cash repeats, the sales contract compliance. So there are various fields. Like if you see the finance is completely now data analytics, there is no difference, there is no bias. So even as a professional, if you are even working in a company as a chartered accountant, if you are heading a department, everywhere you need to understand. And let me tell you, so Paul sir is a living example of that. There is no age to learn anything. I even don't know whether India has seen computer in 1981 when he became a chartered accountant. But he has learned over the years, and today he gave you a session on IT general control. So there is no age for learning. So please embrace these technologies. Please try to understand it. It's very easy to. So now you would say, Ashish, you told a lot many things about technology, but भैया इसको use कैसे करें, कहाँ से use करें, कैसे करें? I've already told you, you have been using Excel, but Excel comes with its limitation. There are row limitation, there are processing speed limitations, buffer limitation, and everything. For that, then came Microsoft Access. Now, what is Microsoft? It's simply a database, but you need to know Microsoft Access query language to access it. But with the time, this has evolved a lot, and you can see on my desktop, there are various kinds of tools available. Well, let me tell you one thing. These are the various tools, but the two tools or three tools which have gained momentum in the last few years are Tableau and ClickView. You will find these tools. You talk about business intelligence, you might find SAP BI, you might find Oracle BI. But let me tell you, even if you find Oracle and SAP BI, Tableau and ClickView has found their place even with SAP BI and Oracle BI. Why? Because they are very user friendly. Now, they are user friendly, but still Tableau ranks more on user friendly than ClickView. Whereas ClickView basically ranks more on the analysis part with Tableau. Again, like it's all about your own perspective. This is my perspective. But these are the two tools which I would suggest you all at least become aware of. Because the day you land up in an organization with the audit, you will be asking for various data. And then a guy with the IT department will be sitting and giving you these data. Again, somebody else will be operating it, but you need to understand it. And if you can operate, let me tell you, these are technologies which the basics of which you can even learn in 1 month, and you don't need any of the coding experience for that. Well, if you really want to go ahead, then you need to learn R and Python. These are the languages. These basically take up your data. R is being used in the actuarial world like we use Excel in the finance world, I would say. So an actuarial world cannot stand without R. And Python is coming up very, very well. Python is something which you should learn. Don't think that you cannot learn programming. You have been doing programming. How many of you don't know macros in Excel, the Excel experts? You all know macros, right? Macros are programmed, though they are automation tools. So even Python you can learn. You do not to have a senior developer profile for that. Learn Python. See what Python is all about. Why Python? Because Python is the one which finds its application starting from data analytics to artificial intelligence. We will see. So please make a note of it. If the PPT is not shared to you, make a note of it. But please check it out. Please check it out. These tools at least have a little bit of knowledge about it. Okay. So again, coming back to our old friend Superman. So the Superman is again here. So he has again grown in his professional world by using the data analytics. Well, now he has grown. He has grown a lot. Now he's getting multiple assignments. And this is a very common thing with any entrepreneur, is that, or with anyone, as you grow, you become more confused. That how do you handle things? So execution is something which is very important. Our Superman also become complex. I'm getting so many assignments. I know data analytics, but again and again, I am doing the same thing. I am again doing the same stuffs of data analytics. Everywhere I am using it, even in the company, whatever I am doing today, I have to do it tomorrow also. Kitna acha hota if I would not have, if I would wake up one morning and somebody tells me you don't have to do those mundane, operative, repetitive tasks again for this assignment. Though I love it because I get paid for it, but still I somehow dislike it. So fine. So he was again very much depressed and he don't know. And he again resorted back to his old invisible friend. Well, I don't know how come, but Batman always comes to know that his friend is dejected or depressed. He again came to him, again heard his story, and that boss, how do I help you? What happened? You have learned data analysis, but don't you know about robotics process automation? Oh my goodness, what's that? Hey, that's the exact solution of the problem which you are facing, and then you will not have to resort to your old good invisible friend. Okay, so what's robotics process automation? So there goes the Batman. So robotics process automation, it's nothing. It's just automation of your mundane repetitive manual tasks that were previously handled by humans. See, one important and a mazedar thing is that we are now started using previously. That means what? The world is embracing these technologies. The previously word is everywhere. So now people have started using it, and like pre-COVID era and post-COVID era, there will come time like a pre-RPA era or a pre-automation era. So what can RPA do for you? RPA can automate anything you are doing repeatedly without using brain. Please write somewhere without using brain. So let me take you to an example of a piano. So you have an office and you have a piano in office. Okay. So one day you call your piano and tell boss, every day night I will make a 3 stacks of files. The number 1 file has to be given to the Mr. Sharma 1. The number 2 stack has to be given to Mr. Sharma 2. The number 3 stack has to be given to Mr. Sharma 3. And I don't have to tell you again and again. The day you will come in the morning, you will find these 3 stacks and please follow the instruction. The next day PM comes for the cleaning. He sees that 3 stacks. He takes up those 3 stacks and distributes it Sharma 1, Sharma 2, Sharma 3. This is nothing but robotics process automation. So every day you don't have to call PM and tell boss, take it to Sharmaji 1, Sharmaji 2, Sharmaji 3. You are basically, you have automated. So basically you have fed in the rule in his mind that boss, tomorrow morning, you come, you see a stack, you take up a stack, put it on Sharmaji's 1, Sharmaji's 2, Sharmaji's 3. That's it. That is precisely the robotics process automation. So it can open your email attachments. It can open your move up your files. It can do a copy pasting. It can do scrapping, making calculation. It can do various, even the Excel task which you do repeatedly, it can automate those things. So why do we need it? That can be done by anything? No. There's RPA softwares provide you various capabilities of doing all these which you are seeing on the left bottom corner. A single RPA software can handle all of these if programmed and if bots are created. What are bots? It comes from robots, you know. So we need to use some jargon. So the IT guys created bot. Now, what are bots? Bots are the automated programs who take care of your mundane tasks. So it's basically the robots in the robotic process automation. So this is simply what a robotics automation is. Now, applications of robotics like data analytics, I will tell you, RPA is everywhere. If you remember macro, then the first thing my macro teacher taught me in the college is to copy a row of data and paste it somewhere. Now, when you are doing various kind of reconciliations, it's a very common thing to do, to copy a data from one sheet and to paste. There are other things which Excel has provided, like the consolidated functions and other sheet merge functions. But still, you have to copy those data. Why don't you have a robot doing this for you, so you don't have to do it. So even if you are using your IT tools, what I want to emphasize, even if you are using your IT tools, still robotic process automation finds a way. So robotics process automation is everywhere. It's in procurement, it's in sales, it's in finance, audit, tax, HR. It's everywhere. Well, again, one of my good chartered accountant friends asked me, what do I do with RPA? Why you are telling me this technical stuff? These are not technical stuff. As we have just heard about the IT general controls from Mr. Paul, you need to also control, you need to see this when you are doing internal audit. So as an internal audit, you need to be an internal control tester. First of all, you need to be a control owner. Then you need to be an internal control tester. And then you need to be an internal audit tester. Okay, and what are the risks? The risks are data governance, data privacy. See, when you talk about technology, let me tell you, privacy and data protection is ubiquitous, it's omnipresent, it's everywhere. So we need to understand that this is one thing, that the middle one, privacy and data protection, is the one which you should imbibe in your mind as a chartered accountant, as an auditor, as any professional, as a user, whatever you are, you have to imbibe that. Okay, so this slide is just about some of the RPA tools which are available. The market is dominated by Automation Anywhere, UiPath, Blue Prism, and WorkFusion, Pegasystems. These are the few dominant one. If you see the Blue Prism and UiPath has already migrated. Now, why I'm telling you about these tools? I'm not asking you to learn them. Be aware of it. And if try to use, like WorkFusion started a free RPA. I have asked all my clients to use it. At least use it. So you need to be aware of these tools, the tools which the companies are using, so that you can audit better. Each of them has got benefit, and so when you see the limitations, you need to basically understand whether that limitations has been mitigated or not from the auditor's perspective. Okay, so now again came our good old chartered accountant Superman. Now I am telling old, yes, he has grown old in his profession. He has grown tremendously. And now he is getting these audit assignments from various of the places. Now he is getting an audit assignment from one of the social media marketing organization. Okay, social media marketing organization. That should be a cakewalk for him. He has done lots of audit in insurance. Insurance is famous for its data. What will this marketing guy have? But as he entered into the gamut of this audit of social media marketing data, he was bombarded with the data which he has never seen before. There was no structure. The data was coming from everywhere. You would say, a customer said, hi, I want to use it. You would find some other using that image. He didn't know where the data is. So like again, he became very confused, rejected and everything. And he again resorted to his old good friend, the invisible friend. Well, what happened after this? He resorted to invisible friend. Was he able to come out of it? I'll tell you in a while. Let me tell you what is a structured data and unstructured data. So structured data which have been seen in the organizations. Anything which have been stored properly is being accessed. CRM, sales, Excel, database, finance. Everything is a structured data. But the world moved out of it. There is an external world. Now, the audit is not only about the internal environment. The external environment plays a lot of role out in it. And the external environment bombards you with the unstructured data. So in the Facebook, if you log in and if you scroll your screen, you would see within seconds the screen are changing. Every time the data is being created, your WhatsApp, your email, your social media. Social media is something which is bombarding you with the data. And they have got no structure. No structure in the Facebook data. You can write anything, everything on the social media, and it becomes a data for analysis. I don't have to tell there has been some data privacy and those some norms are being going on. So these all database does not follow any structure, doesn't have any relation, are said to be your unstructured data. So if these are unstructured data, the another common word which you will hear very commonly is big data. Now, what is big data? Nothing, very simple. Big data means enormous volume of data, which has got a lot of variety. As I have told you, there are no relationship, no particular rules and regulation, and which has got a velocity. Now, what is velocity? Velocity is that they are being extremely quick They are continuously generated, they are continuously harnessed, they are continuously being consumed. This is what is big data. So big data, well, big data assist is nothing different. I'll just go very quickly on this slide. We have a lot to tell. Well, it's again the population-based audit, relationship prediction, fraud detection. We just take a note of 4 number point, which I have told you, external business relations. So these big data allows you to understand how a company is performing externally. What is the perception, user perception? We have been auditing customer service data, but how? Only those which are coming in the system. Now the Facebook has, the Twitter has. You see your customer service representative will not work, but your Twitter customer service representative will work because the data is public. So it's external business relationship, which has come up very strongly and you need to take care of it. Okay, good. So again, why is here? I have understood about unstructured data, but I don't know what to do with it. My goodness, why these things come in my life again? He was very dejected. The depression elapsed. And his Batman also came again. Hey man, why do I find you every time sitting here and or something? Hey, what can I do? Now this data has come and I don't know what. You don't know what? Haven't you heard about artificial intelligence? Hey, what's that? I have heard it, but I don't know anything. Haven't you heard about ML? Machine learning, yeah? Haven't you heard about DL? DL, yeah, driving license. Oh man, it's deep learning. It's not driving license. Hey man, I don't know anything about it. Can you please help me, Batman? Oh, sure, as always. So we have data analytics and robotics process automation for structured data. How do we analyze unstructured data? We have machine learning, deep learning, and artificial intelligence over it. Well, very good. Thanks a lot, Ashish. You have told a thing. What is machine learning? What is deep learning? What is AI? And exactly what's the difference between these three? Let me go through it. So you can see a robot reading a book. Oh my goodness, this is machine learning. Book पढ़ता है क्या robot? हाँ, पढ़ सकता है. But boss, you have to make it to read it. Hey, how can I do it? Now I'll tell you a very common thing, a very thing is that practice makes you perfect. What is machine learning? It learns from your data. It learns from your pattern. Like we know that Doha from Kavi is that karat karat abhyas ke jadmati hot sujan. So if you keep on practicing, you will get into it. So that is what machine knows about it. So we basically feed in data. We feed in answers to that data. And machine knows, okay, iske liye ye answer tha, iske liye ye answer tha, iske liye ye answer tha. Fine, done. Come back to our Peon example. So now I have told Peon that obviously this stack 1 is for sale, Sharmaji 1, stack 2, Sharmaji 2, stack 3, Sharmaji 3. Fine. Now what happened? One day I mixed it up. So I put up a stack 2 first, stack 3, but from the day when I've been using a color coding, red, yellow, and green. So now the peon came the next morning and he thought, okay, there's something wrong about it. So I have been feeding it that this red color is Sharmaji 1, yellow Sharmaji 2, sorry, data for Sharmaji, and the 3 is for Sharmaji 3. You take it up. Now he knows it and he has distributed the file accordingly. What he has done? He has basically learned from the pattern. This is precisely machine. Let me tell you. So if you can see in the diagram, in earlier automation, you used to feed in data, you used to feed in rules, and you used to get in answers. Now you feed in data, you feed in answers to that questions, and the machine makes its own rule. This is all about machine learning. So, oh my goodness, this is not a biology class. I can see some dendrite out here. Again, our Superman is asking, hey, why you are teaching me biology? Well, man, be very, very, very true. Ekdam thoda sa बताऊंगा मैं आपको. It's basically artificial neural network. So what is artificial neural network? What is neural network? It's basically the nervous system. Our dendrites receives the signal. Our human brain, the cell body, the soma processes it, and our axon transforms it to synapses where these reflexes are being transformed in the body. In the same way, an artificial neural network emulates the human brain neural network, and it basically sums the various data, applies the activation function, and outputs that data. Now, why is this required? I will tell you again our PN example. So once what happened, our PN came into the office and suddenly Sarmaji was not there. I don't know what happened. COVID struck him or he resigned. I don't know. Sarmaji was not there. So he was standing with the stack of the file. He don't know where the Sarmaji one is. So what would he do? He don't have any pattern. He don't know what to do when Sarmaji is not there. But this artificial neural network of his brain, the natural human neural network of his brain told him that, boss, Sarmaji is not there. But see, there is someone sitting in the place of Sarmaji. You can put up the file to him. This is precisely deep learning. So what is deep learning? Deep learning is basically analyzing a data. A similar human would draw conclusion. So it's basically emulating your brain. It's basically emulating your brain. This is precisely deep learning. So whereas machine learning would need a guidance, a pattern, an answer, deep learning would basically do an interpretation and would find its own answers by applying intelligence. And there comes your artificial intelligence. So there are various applications of deep learning. You can see image recognition, natural portfolio. You can see, go through this slide. Okay. So now the Superman is asking a question. You have told me about everything. What about computer vision? मैंने सुना computer देख सकता है. अरे computer तो देखते हैं ना. Webcam कहाँ से आया? Fine, but what is computer vision? It's nothing but you're analyzing images and videos by using artificial neural network. Why I'm telling you, you will come through this jargon, this terminology very often in the community. So what is now artificial intelligence? So artificial intelligence is nothing but what we have been talking since last 40 minutes by now. So artificial intelligence is nothing but the ability of machines to function like human brain. You can see the robot is thinking. So who is that lady underneath? She is Sophia, the humanoid. She can do everything a human can do. Oh my goodness, not everything what a human can do. And we, like as Sir said, we would not like artificial intelligence to replace human, and technology cannot do it. It's always at our service. We have Siri on our mouth. We are having now driverless cars. So these are all basically various applications of artificial intelligence. Deep learning is artificial intelligence. For that matter, machine learning is also artificial intelligence. So if I put it all together under one basket, how do I see it? Deep learning is in the core of artificial intelligence using various kind of neural networks. This is nothing but a subfield of machine learning pattern recognition. Deep learning goes ahead and do a kind of judgment. And the entire gamut is under artificial intelligence. In artificial intelligence, you will find IoT and many other stuff we talked about. What are these Russian dolls? All of us have seen these Russian dolls in our childhood. हम कई जन बोलते थे माँ का पेट. So doll kholi, ek doll nikli, dusri doll nikli. So these interconnected systems or the concepts are nothing but Russian dolls. So don't become fearful when you come across these terminologies, and you also need to understand what you need to audit. Well, what are the various tools? The tools which you are seeing on my desktop are nothing but, these are the freely available tools which you can use and you can emulate artificial intelligence. I don't want to become an artificial intelligence programmer, but have a hands on it. कोई problem नहीं है if we do give a weekend on it and if we just work on it, and on Monday we know what TensorFlow is, how it is going. IBM Watson is gaining momentum. It's one of the fantastic tools which is gaining momentum. If you see underneath again Python. Python is an AI programming language. So Python was a data analytics programming language. Python is also AI. So that is the reason what I told you, or chartered accountants, and even I would recommend institute, even I would recommend IIA to basically start a course on Python. Let chartered accountants understand Python. because this is going to be the future. And Python is something which they can use in data analytics, which they can use in RPA, which they can use in AI. So these are the various tools. You can take a note of it. You can click a picture of it. Please try these ones. Okay. So where do we think is the artificial intelligence in the audit? Again, that good old auditor asked me that मैं क्या करूँ इतना technology जान के? You don't have to learn technology, but you need to understand that you can do a better risk assessment if you use AI. You can do a better fraud detection, which you have to do it anyways. You can work with large volume of population of data, and above all, थोड़ा बहुत सोचने का काम outsource कर देते हैं ना AI को. Let's outsource our chunk of the repetitive intelligence. Again, repetitive intelligence, because you cannot outsource entire of your intelligence out there. So this is how you can apply AI in your audit. Well, friends, so today you are graduating from this institute with a newer graduate degree. So you know what is all about AI, what is all about RPA. Just to sum up quickly, data analytics is a programmed analytics. It takes up your structured data. It gives you a beautiful output where you can do a meaningful insight, derive meaningful insight, and do a wonderful decision. RPA automates your repetitive mundane tasks that peon with sales wala file and all those. Machine learning is basically self-learning through pattern that peon with color coding wala stuff. Deep learning is self-learning with intelligence. That peon who knew if Sarma Jivan is not sitting, whoever is there is the sales head and is supposed to be right. And artificial intelligence is Sophia, the human art. So you are basically using everything out of here. With this, friend, I would like the robot would like to tell you a thank you. Please do connect with me. I'll just share my email ID. You can write it down at ashish.singhal@inavi.in. If you have some queries or the moderators can share with you, please do bombard my emails with queries, because this is how I learn. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Over to you, Rhythm.
Thank you so much, sir, for this interesting session. This was really interesting in the way of story. As we are left with less time, in the interest of time, we will have to skip the question and answers. As you have shared your email ID, I am sure people, participants who are watching it and have questions will surely share questions to you. And I would extend my gratitude to all the participants and very well-versed speakers for spending your precious time to attend the virtual CPE meeting. A special thanks to CA Charanjot Singh Nanda sir for organizing this event. The CPE hours will be credited automatically to your account, those who are attending this session, based on the time of your joining. And also this program is available on YouTube. You can watch it there anytime. You will just go to the YouTube and check it out there. And for any questions, as the faculties have shared their email ID, you can raise your questions over there. Any ending comments from you, from the faculties?
I just want to thank the organizers and particularly Mr. Singh and each one of you at the department, which is Aarti, Shailesh, and other co-speakers on the panel and yourself. Thank you for a wonderful session and for the opportunity to address the...
Thank you, Rhythm, and thank you, everyone. Thank you, organizer, Mr. Singh. Great to share the platform with Mr. Paul and Mr. Divyang. And thanks a lot, Mr. Kaiser. And thank you. Thanks all participants for to be here with patience and so leading. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We will end the session here.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Desai.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.